brought to you by Newsworks in cooperation with the City of Eau Claire. This program is simulcast on WRFB-LP 101.9 FM.
The Eau Claire City Council meeting will now come to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam City Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Anderson. Councilmember Anderson. Councilmember Beaton. Councilmember Anderson.
Here.
Councilmember Beaton.
We lost her.
Councilmember Berge.
Here.
Councilmember Christofferson.
Here.
Councilmember Emmanuel.
Here.
Councilmember Gregert.
Here.
Councilmember Klinkhammer.
Here.
Councilmember Lohr.
Here.
Councilmember Weld.
Here.
Councilmember Worthman.
Here.
Thank you. Again, welcome to this Monday, April 13th, virtual meeting of the Eau Claire City Council. I want to extend a sincere welcome to all of you joining remotely for this meeting. This will be our first virtual meeting, and I'm confident everything will go smoothly, but appreciate your patience as well if we experience any unforeseen bumps along the way. During our Monday meeting, the Eau Claire City Council conducts public hearings, listening sessions, and public discussion where residents in our community are invited and encouraged to ask questions and weigh in on the important decisions we will be making at our legislative session either tomorrow at 4 p.m. in these chambers or in the coming weeks and months ahead. We want to thank Valley Media Works for live streaming this proceeding. To those of you not able to join us on WebEx, to watch, please visit valleymediaworks.org or visit channel 994 on Spectrum Cable. It'll also be simulcast at 101.9 FM. And you can find past meetings on YouTube on the Chippewa Valley Media Works channel. If you plan to address the council this evening, I will briefly review the protocol. Once an agenda item is introduced, staff will present on that item, and following that presentation, the council may have questions to clarify an issue. We then will open the item for public input. Once the item is open for comment, please raise your hand on the WebEx screen, and I will call on you in the order in which the requests to speak are received. When it is your turn to comment, I will unmute you and ask you to please state your name and address, and then you can begin sharing your comments. We welcome you to speak for 5 minutes, and I will notify you when there's only 1 minute left. When you have reached 5 minutes, I will then ask you to bring your statement to a close. Once you finish your statement, I'll then ask you to lower your hand on the screen, and you will then be muted, but are welcome to stay online to listen in to the rest of the meeting or share a comment on any of the other agenda items or public commentary. If you do plan to speak on another agenda item, please follow the same previous procedure when the agenda item is opened for comment. Sometimes council members will ask you follow-up questions, so please give us a moment before disconnecting. Again, if you wish to speak on an item that is not listed on the agenda, you may do so during the public comment period at the end of the meeting. Lastly, if you're not comfortable speaking openly, then you can fill out a comment form on the city website, and those comments are then shared with council members ahead of our legislative meeting tomorrow night. As always, you can email or call the council members outside of this meeting, and our contact information can be found on the city website. With that introduction, We'll get on to our first order of business. There are 5 items scheduled for a public hearing, and agenda item number 1 is a public hearing on an ordinance rezoning a property located at 3001 Gateway Drive from TC3 to C3P, and to adopt the general development plan with site plan for a commercial building. This item was postponed from the March 23rd and 24th council meeting. Mr. Allen, good evening.
Good evening, President Weld and members of the council. Before I start, is this good volume?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Looks like everybody is muted. I should note as well and respectfully request that all the panelists keep their microphones muted. We did observe that at the Plan Commission meeting last week, that even just one open microphone can cause some feedback or some unnecessary background noise. So appreciate that. So with that, thank you again, President Weld and members of the council. And for this evening is a request from the applicant Quick Trip. They're requesting to rezone property from TC3, which is a temporary commercial zoning, to C3P to adopt a general development plan with site plan for a commercial building located at 3801 Gateway Drive. The property itself is about 2.4 acres in size. This item was before the Plan Commission at their meeting last week. This is before you with a unanimous recommendation for approval. Before moving on from that and see if there are any questions, I do want to just highlight a few of the key items for your consideration here this evening. The applicant, again, is proposing a convenience store as shown on at the location shown there on the slide. The convenience store would have both fuel and a car wash. A comprehensive plan does identify this area as commercial. We move to the next slide, please. Thank you. This area, particularly this property, was annexed into the city back in 1990. The owners at that time were not interested in selling to the Walmart project immediately to the east of this property. However, the current status of the property is that there's a single family home that is vacant. The property owner is interested in moving forward with this proposed project for you this evening. The site plan shows an 8,300 square foot store with storage area and car wash. Will you move to the next slide, please? Move to the next one as well. Thank you. This shows some of the turning movements. We'll talk a little bit more about some of the traffic situation and access points here in a brief moment. Will you move to the next slide, please? Thank you. The narrative provided by the applicant, we'll show some those elevations here, color elevations here momentarily. It does show a brick facade with stainless steel metal roof, very similar to what may see other similar Quick Trip properties. A building canopy fascia are noted as Quick Trip franchise colors as well, and those are again shown in the building elevations we'll show here in a momentarily. What's a little bit new is this is a revised prototype. It's going to have a little bit larger retail floor area, as well as a kitchen and mechanical space. It's all in one level. Again, about 8,300 square feet. The required parking is 34 stalls. Can you move to the next slide, please? This shows some of the landscaping as well, along with those 34 stalls that are required. The site plan is proposing 39 stalls. A proposed store would have, again, 2 access points on Gateway Drive, as you see here, and 1 within the existing Walmart parking lot. The applicant may share a little bit more specifics or updates related to that, but as you see there to the top left of the site plan, you see the access back to the Walmart parking lot. That may shift slightly to the right, as you see in the drawing here, to align with one of the drive aisles in Walmart. The applicant has also noted a sidewalk that runs in front of the store on the right-hand side of the drawing there. It does connect to sidewalk currently on Gateway Drive and would likely also connect to the top of the screen up into the Walmart parking lot as well. So with that, I'm sure I'm tracking right with our presentation materials here. If we move to the next slide, that'll show the color elevations and the proposed building design from the applicant. With that, I know Deputy City Engineer Leah Ness is also on the line and is prepared to provide some additional information related to traffic impact analysis that's been done in this area. So with that, I'll turn it over to her.
Leah, are you there?
I am. Good evening.
Good evening. Welcome.
Thank you. I just wanted to provide a little more background on the traffic related to this site. In 2003, SEH did a study, which was a follow-up study to a Parsons traffic analysis that was done in the late 90s for the whole mall area, including Target, Menards area as well. And as a part of that analysis, they looked at the zoning of the land uses, and this proposed site has been considered as a potential restaurant, retail location throughout the previous studies in the late 90s up until now. As a part of those studies, a number of trips were generated or allotted for the different parcels, and the trips generated by the proposed development fall within the range of those studies. The traffic analysis has been completed and submitted to the city. We are working with the DOT and the county on finalizing and getting approvals back to the developer and the consultant that completed the TIA. But in general, the estimated traffic that the Quick Trip would bring in during a morning and evening peak hour would range between 395 vehicles to 321 vehicles. That's entering and exiting. So approximately 200 entering and exiting in the morning peak and 160 entering and exiting during the evening peak. We did not ask the developer to look at the intersection of Gulf, Brill, and Gateway. We did ask them to look at the driveway accesses to the proposed site. So they looked at 4 locations. I will call the northernmost access point the Walmart North access, and that's the road that intersects Gateway, but also lines up with an access point to the shared use access for McDonald's and Fazoli's on the west side of Gateway. And then they looked at 2 driveway access points along Gateway Drive to Quick Trip, and then additionally the southern Walmart driveway access, which I will reference. The level of service at all of these intersections was a level of service C or better, which is very good. It's a level of service is a grading system for the flow of traffic through an intersection, with the level of service A being really no delays and free movement of traffic. A level of service D and E is kind of getting to congestion at the intersection. A level of service E being near capacity at the intersection. At the Walmart North intersection, the eastbound approach is the only intersection approach that started at the level of service D, and with the additional traffic added to Gateway, fell to a level of service E. I do have to disclose that on that approach, during the peak hour, there were 12 vehicles. So it's not servicing a lot of traffic. Most of the traffic is on Gateway going north and south, or on the Walmart access driveway going westbound. So that eastbound approach went from a level of service D, which had approximately 34 seconds of delay, to a level of service E with 48 seconds of delay approximately. So about an increase of 15 seconds of delay for those 12 vehicles that were using that intersection. I would anticipate that traffic would be okay with this type of delay, especially with that few of vehicles. And if they experience more delay than that, they would probably find an alternate access out of that location. And there are 2 other driveways that they could use to exit from the west side of the gateway. So all in all, the traffic analysis showed that the intersection and traffic, the intersections along Gateway Drive will operate at level of service C or better, which is acceptable. Typically, we'd accept a level of service D or better for all movements. And with the exception of that one approach, which serves minimal traffic. So overall, I would say that the traffic will not have a great impact to the area, and that we can keep the existing cross sections for that traffic. A couple other items to talk about on this are just the 35-foot driveway access points that Scott had shown a slide earlier. And the turning movements for that are justifiable with the truck turning movements, and that was approved as shown at the Plan Commission, along with city approval.
Okay.
And with that, I guess I will take any questions if anyone has any.
Does council have any questions for Ms. Ness or for Mr. Allen? Council members that are joining us remotely, if you wish to have a question, please raise your hand. Council members in chamber, any questions? Councilmember Christofferson.
Thank you, President Weld. Mr. Allen, from the presentation at the Plan Commission, this may come out from the project presentation, but I thought it was interesting, and it's not in our packet, what the use is of that far left lot. Do you have information that you could share with us?
Oh, with the lot, yes, where you can see here on the drawing, where it says has the call me for a dig 811 in the north arrow there to the far left of the screen. That is under separate ownership, or will remain under separate ownership, to what I understand. And again, would likely be a future additional smaller, obviously commercial outlot, more connected back to Walmart than certainly tied in with Quick Trip here. But yes, as noted by Councilmember Christofferson, I may defer to the applicant to share a little bit more detail if that's available.
Thank you, Mr. Allen.
Any other questions from council? I don't see any. I guess Mr. Allen, are you there still?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Did Nate or Scott, did they express wanting to speak, or only if there was questions?
I believe Mr. Nate Byam was going to be available.
Okay.
I don't know if he was intending to provide a specific presentation.
Okay.
As I understand it, yes, he'll be available if there are any questions. So it doesn't look like they are planning to provide a specific presentation tonight, only if there are questions.
Okay. All right, again, I'll ask if there are any questions from council, or if there are any applicants that wish to speak to this agenda item, please raise your hand. And not seeing anyone, we will close that item. I'm sorry. We have Christine Clevin? Christine Clevin?
This is Arnie Clevin, and I'm at Chris's computer.
Okay. Good evening.
Good evening. You ready for me to speak?
Sure, if you wish to, you're welcome to.
Okay. I'm Arnie Clevin. I live at 1527 Marquette Street in Eau Claire. I'm from Clevin Real Estate, and I'm the listing agent for the Irene Cardinal Estate for the property at 3801 Gateway Drive. Roger Cardinal, the personal representative for the estate, asked me to speak on their behalf. Irene Cardinal lived at the property for 66 years since it was built in 1952, and Irene passed away in 2018. The property is now vacant, and it is the desire of the estate to sell the property. It has become a burden for the sellers, clearing snow from the sidewalk of over 500 feet, which had to be hired out. Mowing and maintaining the yard of approximately 2 acres has been a burden, and the real estate taxes are also a burden to the sellers. Communication from Ryan Petrie of the Eau Claire City Planning and Zoning stated that the existing land use and structure is the only thing allowed within a TC3 district. The property is surrounded by commercial properties, and as far as I am aware, there are no other single-family houses within a half mile of this property. The sellers would like the property to be rezoned from temporary commercial zoning to permanent commercial zoning so they can sell the property. Thank you for your consideration. Any questions?
Any questions for Mr. Clevin from council? I don't see any. No questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
I will open it up to the public. Is there anyone that wishes to speak to this agenda item that is logged into WebEx at this time? And if so, please raise your hand with the icon on the screen. Is there anyone that wishes to speak to this agenda item? I'm not seeing anyone. Mr. Clevin, if I could get you to lower your hand, I would appreciate it. Thank you. With that, then, we will move on to agenda item number 2, which is a public hearing on an ordinance rezoning a property located at the northeast of Kaden Court and Aspen Ridge Drive from TR1A and R1 to R1 and R2P, and to adopt the general development plan with site plan for twin homes. This item was also postponed from the March 23rd and 24, 2020 council meetings. Again, good evening, Mr. Allen.
Good evening, President Weld and members of the council. Again, before you this evening is a request to rezone property as noted, Aspen Ridge Drive, West County Road F. It is currently TR1A and R1, and the proposed zoning would be a mix of R1 and R2P. The property itself, as you see here on the slide, in the hashed area, is approximately 18 acres. And this property was previously before you for an annexation, and that was approved back at your meeting January 28th of this year. Move to the next slide, please. This shows a little bit how it relates to the surrounding properties, in particular the current and newly constructed properties to the west and south. Move to the next slide, please. We'll kind of just pause here. This is the preliminary map. It was approved by the Planning Commission. And again, the rezoning is before you here this evening, but this just gives a little bit more specificity and detail to view as we have a brief discussion of this item. The project itself proposes 89 lots, 60 61 lots of those would be for single-family development, and 28 lots, or actually 14 structures, so 28 lots would be for twin home development. The development proposal is similar to the existing Aspen Meadows subdivision, which was just previously shown to the southwest, which consists again of a mix of single family and twin homes. The first phase of the development, thank you. The first phase of the development was the existing 4 units on Aspen Ridge Drive to the south of proposed development. The comprehensive plan does identify this area as low density residential, a proposed mix of R1, R2P zoning with a single family twin home development is considered low density development by definition of the comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan does encourage variety and design of new dwellings and neighborhoods, and with that, staff and through the Plan Commission recommending the developer look at a variety and mix of those different types of structures throughout the proposed development. Again, the Plan Commission has recommended approval of this rezoning. At their meeting on March 16th, there were 3 neighbors from the Aspen Meadows area that did speak in opposition primarily to the twin home component. You can see in the slide here at the bottom right corner, you can see that's the majority of where the twin homes, the 28 lots, would be located. And thank you. And the single family would be to the north half of that, or north 2/3, I should say. So with that, again, before you for rezoning request, there were some discussion points on traffic and access. You can see where Kaden Court does connect up to our proposed connection to County Road F to the bottom right there. And again, that does need to go before Chippewa County. Again, this is in Chippewa County in the state of Eau Claire, but does need to go before county, and we've been given no indication there would be any concerns with that connection being made. He is slightly off-site, as you can see from the proposed project, but connecting to County Road F. I don't believe engineering has any additional comments, but I'll defer to them if they have any. So with that, I'll stand for any questions.
Does council have any questions for Mr. Allen in regards to agenda item number 2? If so, please raise your hand. Any questions from council here in chambers? I don't see any questions, Mr. Allen. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Cody, are you there?
Hi, I am. Can you hear me?
We can hear you fine.
Okay, good. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Yeah, we are bringing this. It's really hard for me to see the map, so I can't see the exact lots and which road. But we are looking at doing 61 single families and 14 twin homes. Yeah, 1 through 28. So 28 twin home units, 14 buildings, and then 61 single families. It'll be a good mix of different price points from the twin homes up to the northern edge of the development. Will be some higher end houses, and then kind of a mixture in between. Our Camden development, that I came in the fall of 18, or that's when we started, got approval that summer. Since that time, we have sold all twin home units in there, have accepted offers on them, so we are out of twin home units in there. Average price is $175 to $195 per unit. The single families that we have in Camden, we have sold 12 so far, and have about that many left. Those have an average price of $288,000. So it'll be the same mixture, with everything going on, I don't know when we would start this. We had planned to start it as quick as we could. Maybe would phase it a little bit more, but you know, the next few weeks will be telling with that. We're gonna, at the very least, would like to set it up to be ready to go. As far as the neighbors, there were the 3 neighbors. I had met with each of them individually before the meeting, and all were pretty receptive. 2 of them did come in to the meeting and then ended up talking to them in the hall afterwards. Their concern was we would be doing rental duplexes in there, and I assured them we wouldn't. And one of the neighbors actually called me 2 days after the meeting and said he is supportive of it and appreciates everything. So I believe we have the neighbors' blessing on this as much as we can. And yeah, it'll be a good development. We'd love to get it started soon. So any questions for me?
Any questions from council for the developer? Again, any questions from those participating remotely? Any questions from council here in chambers? I don't see any questions. Thanks, Cody.
Okay, thank you.
If I could get you to lower your hand, I would appreciate it.
Yep.
Thank you. Sean, are you there? Sean?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yep, if you could just talk a little bit louder, that would be great.
Okay. Well, thank you, President Weld and council members. My name is Sean Bohan, 1504 Sherwin Avenue, Eau Claire. I'm an engineer with Advanced Engineering Concepts, the project manager on Walnut Grove. Just wanted to touch on 2 items in regards to the rezone of the Twin Home area. Number 1 ends up being the access out onto Jeffers Road, County Trunk Highway F. We have touched base with Chippewa County. We have marked the location of that intersection, and we do end up having a verbal preliminary approval. We will be sending plans to them here in the next couple days for actual approval of that intersection. If you've visited the site at all, the location of that intersection is basically right over the top of the existing driveway. And there's very good sight distance both to the south and to the north. So there isn't any issues at all with that. The second item I wanted to touch on was just the size of the twin home lots that would be abutting the single family. It's lots 11 through 18, about the 4 residents and stuff. Those lots are really deep. We ended up making them, I believe they're about 190 feet in depth. Typically, we end up having them about 120, and the reason we did that is to make sure that we ended up having the twin home buildings far enough away from the single family and to be able to end up having, whether we put a vegetative buffer and stuff that ends up being there, but we just wanted to end up being courteous, and the owner is very cognizant of the fact that they are butting up against the single family, so he just wants to make sure that he gives them plenty of room. And with that, I'm here to answer any other questions.
Any questions from council in regards to, for Sean? Again, any questions from council in regards to agenda item number 2? I don't see any questions, Sean. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else that wishes to speak to this agenda item? Mr. Hendrickson?
Hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you. Yep, if you could just speak up a little louder.
All right. Good evening, council members. My name is Justin Hendrickson. I live at 1324 Kaden Court in Eau Claire. I am here to express my opposition to the zoning change to R2 Twin Homes and the overall site plan named Walnut Grove. In June of 2018, John Shepke, the developer or owner at the time of Aspen Meadows, went door to door asking the neighborhood to sign an amendment to our protective covenants that would release the undeveloped land to the north. Included in these covenants was a minimum allowed lot size. The stated reason for this change was because C&M likes to use their own covenants. At that time, we were given a site plan that showed 30 single-family lots, and we're told that C&M would be building single-family homes that would start in the $300,000 range. John Shepke further stated in an email to my wife that C&M wants to use their own covenants because they are building larger homes. A copy of that email, as well as the site plan that we were given, has been forwarded to you. In June of 2019, C&M purchased an additional 18 acres to the east of Aspen Meadows, increasing the size of their undeveloped land. Last month, our neighbors were given notice of the proposed zoning change to that 18 acres of land. My wife obtained the site plan for Walnut Grove, and it does not resemble anything like what was discussed when we were asked to amend our covenants. Instead of 30 lots, there were 46. If you look at the entire plan, you will see that the proposed 61 single-family lots, that 29 of those lots were smaller than a quarter acre. Those lots are not comparable with the sizes to the existing neighborhood. We were never told of the intent to build twin homes that would be attached to our development. We feel that we were lied to in order to get us to sign amended covenants. As to the issue of the twin homes, in the last 4 years, plans for 124 twin homes or 248 new residences have been approved and built or are in the process of being built along 1.2 miles of Jeffers Road. My wife and I are worried about the overall density of houses being proposed for Walnut Grove. Our development has 25 children that are elementary aged or younger. These children are very active outside, riding bikes, scooters, and we are worried about the increased traffic that 89 new residents will bring to our area. We are asking that the developer change the site plan to make the lots larger like was originally proposed so that there is more space and less density, as well as to change the twin homes to single-family unions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hendrickson. Now I can just wait to see if there's any questions from council. Does council have any questions for Mr. Hendrickson? Councilmember Christopherson.
Thank you, President Weld. Thank you for your comments, Mr. Hendrickson. I'm wondering, have you spoken with the developer at this point?
No, I have not reached out, and neither he has reached out to us.
Thank you.
Any other questions from council? Well, we appreciate your calling in and reaching out.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak to this agenda item? And if so, please raise your hand by clicking on the icon on your screen. Good evening, Ms. Wolfgram.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you. Just maybe speak as loud as you can. That would be great.
You. My name is Susan Wolfgram. I sit on the Plan Commission, and I'm co-chair of Jonah's Affordable Housing Task Force. I live at 550 Graham Avenue, Eau Claire. President Weld and respected members of the City Council, I strongly support the rezoning to move forward on C&M Builders' single-family twin home development. I'm very familiar with C&M Builders who are filling a very important niche in our housing market, the need for quality, affordable housing for middle-income families and individuals within diverse neighborhoods. Neighborhoods that integrate a variety of family sizes, types, and incomes is healthy for the neighborhood, healthy for our community, and healthy for our economy. On the spectrum of affordable housing is the need for single-family home ownership opportunities at an affordable price point for our middle-income families and individuals. As Cody noted, at the $175,000 beginning base price for a twin home, The monthly mortgage payment, including homeowners insurance and private mortgage insurance, would be $756. If you allow for utilities, the monthly housing expenses could easily be $900 a month. A household at 60% of our county median income, which is approximately $55,700, and 60% of that would be $33,420, is paying 33% of their household income for housing if those costs stay under $919 a month. I encourage you to vote yes and support the rezoning to move forward on the single-family twin home development. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wolfgram. Let me just see if there's any questions for you. Any questions from council? I don't see any. Thank you for phoning in.
Thank you.
Mr. Gartman, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Peter Gartman. I'm with Real Land Surveying. I live at 1360 International Drive in Eau Claire. I just thought I'd speak to the second previous caller about the intent of the single-family homes and the change of the covenants. I believe we're keeping the intent of that because we don't have any twin homes within that area. This is a rezone of an area that excludes the area that gentleman previously discussed. I just thought I'd make that point.
All right, thank you. If you could wait one moment just to see if there's any questions. Any questions from council for Mr. Gartman in regards to the covenants? I don't see any. Thank you. Appreciate you reaching out.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Yeah, you too. Again, is there anyone else that wishes to speak to this agenda item? If so, please raise your hand by clicking on the icon on the screen. Seeing none, we'll move on to agenda item number 3, which is a public hearing on an ordinance rezoning property located at the western terminus of Lorch Avenue from TR1A to C3P and R3P, and to adopt the general development plan with site plan for multifamily apartment buildings and commercial development. Good evening, Mr. Allen.
Good evening, President Wells. I believe there's still somebody or multiple people on the line that may need to be muted. Or I think I still hear one or more out there. All right, thank you. Thank you again, President Weld and members of the council. Bear with me as we go through quite a bit of information here this evening, a number of slides as well. The second part of the presentation from staff will be from Leah Ness, WCD engineer again. So with that, I'll get started with the first slide, the next slide, I should say. Thank you. Again, this shows current conditions out in the area. Move ahead to the next slide. Thank you. Showing the general area for public hearing notification. I know the applicant will also reference some of the other communications they've had with other neighbors and businesses along Lorch Avenue here. If we go to the next slide, I'll start with some additional comments. Thank you. This shows the current zoning and the zoning around the area. Again, the applicant is HK Development, LLC, along with their engineering provider, Everyday Surveying and Engineering. The property here at the terminus, western terminus of Lorch Avenue, south side of Interstate 94, is about 41.58 acres in size. Current zoning is TR1A. Proposed zoning would be a mix of C3P and R3P. With that, again, they're looking also to adopt the general development plan for that commercial development and multifamily residential development. Applicant is also proposing, which will be before you on your agenda tomorrow, a 4-lot certified survey map, or CSM, with 1 commercial lot of 4.63 acres. We can jump ahead 2 slides, please. Thank you. So 1 commercial lot of 4.63 acres. You can see there kind of the pink rose colored there at the northeast top right corner. And 3 residential lots of 2.0 acres, 3.335 acres, and 30.14 acres. The applicant, as you may recall, previously submitted applications for review that were recommended for approval by the Plan Commission and subsequently denied by the City Council back in December last year. The new applications propose new residential layouts and mix, which includes the change of 2 lots from proposed commercial zoning to senior or memory care housing. Talk a little bit more about that here in just a moment. Rather than the previously considered 3 commercial lots with a mix of uses, the applicant now proposes only 1 commercial lot, that lot 1, as I've already noted here, the pink or rose color there. This lot is proposed as a 90 to 100 room hotel. The applicant does note that no formal commitments have been made as of this date. Lots 2 and 3, immediately to the west of there, were previously proposed as a mix of commercial uses. Those are now being considered for senior living, memory care, or community-based residential facilities, or CBRFs. However, again, in this case, no formal commitments have been made yet, but if constructed as proposed, the applicant has noted they would consist of 1 building per lot with 30 to 50 rooms each. The proposed large residential lot, which is lot 4 to the south, would have approximately 13.82 acres of developable area. We can jump ahead 2 slides, please. Thank you. This shows the overall layout of the proposed Jones development plan. The new proposal is being submitted, let me back up just a moment. 13.82 acres developable area, and in that larger lot 4, and preserving approximately 16.32 acres as passive open space along Lowe's Creek to the south. This new proposal is submitted as 9 buildings in 6 phases. The first 3 phases, with 1 building per phase, would include 60 units per building, so approximately 180 units. The units would consist of studio, 1 and 2 bedroom units, along with some that would have direct entry. Also new in this submittal, the applicant states that 10% of the total project, or approximately 23 units, would be allocated to what they label affordable and workforce housing units. This would be aimed at renters with incomes of 60 to 100% of area median income. Half of those would be the 60 to 80%, and the other half would be 80 to 100% AMI. Future phases are proposed to transition downward in density, with phases 4 and 5, buildings 4 through 7, built as 10-unit buildings, again immediately to the west of these first 3 60-unit buildings. And phase 6, buildings 8 and 9, at the end, the western end, being more traditional fourplexes. The density has also slightly decreased from the original or previous proposal, I should say, down to an even 16.5 units per acre versus 16.56 units per acre previously. There is a maximum density in the R3 zoning district of 21 units per acre. So the general development plan as proposed does appear to be in compliance with density standards. To kind of bring us up to speed and bring us up to date here on transition from the denied application and what you see before you here this evening. The zoning code does state that a petition for rezoning or rezoning application may not be resubmitted for a period of 1 year if it is, quote, in substantially the same form. However, due to changes in lots 2 and 3 as noted, the density and building type transition of lot 4, the larger lot, and further information provided with regards to traffic and surrounding land use compatibility. Staff does find the application before you this evening in compliance with that code section. With regards to the comprehensive plan, I hate to bounce around here, but if we go back 3 slides. Thank you. Comprehensive plan, planned land use map, as you see here, identifies this site as a transitional area from a mixture of commercial to medium high density residential. So there's been a lot of discussion about that with the applicant as they put together their proposal for you this evening. And again, staff does see that it appears to conform with the planned land use map as you see here. So again, if we could jump ahead, jump ahead 4 slides. Thank you. The applicant, again, is requesting a plan development, so the general development plan is attached with this rezoning request, due to what they call a possibility that one or more buildings may exceed the following. The allowable building height, which is 45 feet in the R3 zoning district. That, again, I may defer to the applicant to explain a little bit more in detail. But those first 3 buildings on the east side, as this shows, or tries to show, the topography in the area, it is possible, that's why it's listed as a possibility, that final grades may make the southern exposure towards Lowe's Creek of those buildings exceed that 45 feet from grade. Also, possibility that may exceed allowable impervious surface coverage, again trying to preserve the open space along Lowe's Creek. You can see there is a mix of surface parking, as well as you can see some connections on those first 3 buildings to some underground parking as well. As well as, finally, may exceed the reduction in 40% front yard green space for the multifamily residential design manual, meaning the parking or developed area in the front yard along this extension here of Lorch Avenue, again with that surface parking, may exceed that 40% open space. So those are the 3 proposed possible deviations from the underlying zoning district that are being requested through the general development plan. So a lot to consider and review, digest here, and I'll move to the next slide and turn it over to Deputy City Engineer Leah Ness once again. Actually, 2 more slides, apologize. Thank you.
Good evening,
Thank you,
Leah.
Mr. Allen.
Ms. Ness?
Thank you.
Thank you.
I wanted to start out by talking about the traffic. In February of 2020, an initial review document was submitted to the city and the DOT for our review. This is a document that identifies the scope of the traffic impact analysis. Comments were provided back to the consultant, and an abbreviated TIA was received in April of this year, and it's currently being reviewed by the DOT. The TIA looked at the operations at the intersection of State Trunk Highway 93, which is owned and operated and maintained by the DOT. Based on the phasing of the project, the TIA looked at on-site and off-site trip generations and analyzed traffic in the years 2023 and 2035. The initial build that is proposed will add 110 to 150 trips during the peak hour. So if you break that down, that means about 60 vehicles will be entering and exiting the intersection during an hour. So about 2 additional vehicles per minute are being added to the intersection in the year 2023. When looking at the full build volumes, the additional traffic added to the intersection for the proposed development will range from 240 to 390 vehicles in the peak hour. Again, that equates to approximately 4 to 7 vehicles being added to the intersection of State Trunk Highway 93 and Lorch Avenue per minute during the peak hour. The peak hour is typically the highest volume hour during the day, so we're looking at one of the worst case scenarios. When you look at the off-site traffic that's estimated to be included in the analysis in both 2023 and 2035, there's approximately 155 to 215 additional trips added to the intersection, which ranges from 3 to 4 vehicles per hour entering and exiting the intersection. So there's really, when you break the amount of traffic down to the minute during the peak hour, not a lot of additional traffic going through this intersection that is signalized, which we can control the timings of the intersection. This intersection is part of a corridor in a coordinated system, and it's the last intersection, the southernmost intersection of this corridor. The signal timings and existing signal timings and analysis were based on timings that the DOT provided to the consultant for analysis. If we move to the next slide, we can see the results of the analysis. And similar to the traffic impact analysis that I talked about at the first agenda item, again, we look at the level of service, which is an A to F rating, and the Q links to measure and review the operation of this intersection. Again, the level of service is a quantitative measure that measures the overall quality of flow at the intersection, ranging from good with level of service A to poor with a level of service F. And for the purposes of this study, a level of service D was defined to be acceptable during the peak hour operation conditions. On the slide, in the very top chart, are the results for the 2023 background traffic. The middle section is the 2023 total traffic. That includes the on-site and off-site development traffic, and then the 2020 or 2035 total traffic at the very bottom of the screen, which includes all traffic as well. Looking at the very top, we'll focus on the eastbound approach, and you can see that level of service D with some level of service D is occurring for the eastbound approach in 2023 with the eastbound Q of 165 feet for the left turn lane. If we move down to total traffic operations for 2023, the queue increases by about 2 vehicles. So up to, the queue extends to 215 feet. When we go to the total build-out, total traffic year in 2035, the eastbound queue is estimated to be 370 feet. So really our impacts are to the eastbound left turn lane and potentially extending that eastbound left turn lane to accommodate the through and right turn traffic, allowing that to get to and around that eastbound left turn traffic would be our concern, is what this analysis is showing us. Otherwise, the level of service on the other approaches is maintained, and the development agreements for the construction required for traffic capacity improvements would be negotiated as part of the site planner plat, and approval of the development agreement process. And again, those recommended improvements are the extension of that eastbound left turn lane. The city is anticipating on improving Lorch Avenue in a future CIP project to take that rural cross-section of the existing road and have curb and gutter along the street and sidewalks. East of the proposed project, it is that rural cross-section that would be upgraded, and it would require a full reconstruct of the street with the curb and gutter and sidewalks along it. Therefore, the extension to the west, the proposed cross-section within the development, proposed development, we are requesting that it be a city street cross-section and curb and gutter. If you can go to the next slide, please. I'll review some of the utilities as well. The existing water main in the area is of adequate size, as is the sanitary, and the depth of the sanitary for the majority of the development. When you get to the far west end of the development, the site may need a lift station. Stormwater calculations for the proposed development need to be provided, showing that the stormwater detention facilities and storm drain piping is adequately sized. And the grading, there may be some 20% slopes that would need to be coordinated through the city and the West Wisconsin Regional Plan Commission. Otherwise, working with the developer and the developer's consultant related to the traffic, they did take into account off-site development, which was shown on that first slide when we were looking at the traffic. The proposed residential west of the site that we are looking at tonight was included in that 2035 traffic analysis, as was the off-site development that was proposed with the Farm and Fleet TIA that is on the east side of Lorch Avenue. That proposed restaurant traffic is included in the analysis, as is the hotel and restaurant expansion that is next to the Florian Gardens and Action City area. That's what I had for traffic and utilities, if there are any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Ness. Is there any questions from council in regards to agenda item number 3? Councilmember Anderson.
Thank you for this presentation. I received a couple of messages from constituents regarding the traffic concerns. So I was just wondering if we could go over that chart again one more time. Look at that again with the grades of D, A, that chart. Great, thank you. I'm just wondering. I just want to confirm that what I was hearing you say is what you were saying, that current levels of traffic at that intersection are evaluated to be at an acceptable level, and that should continue, particularly if there is an extension of that turn lane. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And then the only other concern I have with traffic, and I don't know if you're in a position based on the study to comment on this, is, if one of the developments is I believe is a memory care facility, and my concern, of course, is making sure that the traffic would be amenable to, our emergency vehicles. You wouldn't see, based on this study, an objection with that regard?
I can say from the traffic standpoint and having an emergency vehicle go through this intersection, it is equipped with EVP, so emergency vehicle protection or detection, and they are able to get in and out of the intersection. One of the recommendations for the queuing that extended eastbound traffic queue for the left turn lane is to do some extent of pavement marking at the intersection of Frederick and, or Ryder Road, I apologize. And they do not block intersections. So if there is an emergency to the south of Lorch Avenue, the emergency vehicles should be able to access that. I do not see any blockages going westbound on Lorch Avenue. And then exiting, as I had mentioned, there is the equipment at the signalized intersections would allow the emergency vehicles to get through, as well as their sirens and lights that they would normally have on if needed.
Okay, thank you very much.
Councilmember Christopherson.
Thank you, President Weld. Ms. Ness, I'm wondering, in the comments that came to council today, there were, seemed that commercial, which was proposed earlier, was preferable to denser multifamily. In the engineering assumptions that you're making, what are the differences between the traffic from commercial areas versus residential areas?
You know, I did try to find some information on the measurement of traffic for residential versus commercial, and if there's a level of service analysis that one user would prefer more than the other user, and I was unable to find those measures. But I can tell you some of the differences that the residential area, when they purchase their unit or rent in this location, they are going through the commercial district on a daily basis, maybe multiple times, maybe just once or twice a day. But they purchase that unit knowing that they have the one access to Lorch Avenue at 93 to exit the area. The commercial users are coming to the area for probably a one-time use, or maybe it's their job area, and they understand the operations of the area to get to that location, being if they're an employee or a frequent user of those businesses. When I heard your question earlier too, I was trying to think of the transitioning between the commercial area to the residential area. And one of the things that I like about the proposed layout is the curvature of the road and it potentially slowing traffic through the residential area. And the proposed landscaping that it will soften the streetscape and make note to drivers as they go to the west from the more commercial district area, business area, into the more residential area on the south with the commercial on the north part of Lorch Avenue.
Thank you, Ms. Ness.
Councilmember Berge.
Thank you, Council President. My question from Ms. Ness is, you had mentioned that the TIA is being reviewed by the DOT, and maybe I'm just wondering what happens to their, or if they have feedback, how does that get folded in, and what does that look like?
If they have comments on the TIA, specifically, they'd be looking at the analysis and making sure that the cycle links and the information that the consultant had input into the analysis meets their desires and their expectations. They would provide the comment back to me and we'd relay that to the consultant and ask for either additional improvements to the analysis, changes to the analysis, if we need to make improvements along 93 to make traffic flow improvements for the overall corridor, what would those be? And we'd have the consultant analyze that.
Okay. And so they would have to make those additional improvements at the DOT, or if you agreed with the DOT and what they would think should happen.
That's correct. With the analysis that is shown right now, the level of service of C or better is maintained on State Trunk Highway 93. So I wouldn't anticipate that the DOT would have additional changes or recommendations, but I have not received response from them yet, so I don't want to speak on their behalf.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Berge. Councilmember Beaton.
Thank you. Apologies if you've already mentioned this, Ms. Ness. We're breaking up a little bit on my end, but could you go over the pedestrian infrastructure on Lorch Avenue? I don't believe there's sidewalks. Can you clarify? And has there been any studies on the safety of increased pedestrian traffic on this road?
The existing cross-section of Lorch Avenue is a rural cross-section with no sidewalks at this time. With the anticipation of this development and the need to make improvements on Lorch Avenue in the near future, the city is including Lorch Avenue in an upcoming capital improvement project, which would bring this rural cross-section up to an urban cross-section with sidewalk and potentially a multi-use trail, looking at either having on-street bike lanes or having that multi-use trail connection to the residential area. Within the development, there are many proposed trails, and looking at that, with the future site development and the site plans coming through, we can look at additional pedestrian traffic crossings and locations along Lorch Avenue because there are not very many intersections, but maybe they'd be more applicable at driveway access points where we could do some calming as well if needed with bump outs or raised crosswalks or things of those natures. Specifically to pedestrian analysis, we have not done any pedestrian analysis out here with counts. There may have been some pedestrians included in the TIA counts, but I'd have to go back and take a look at that for you.
Off the top of your head, do you know the year that the project is planned for in the CIP?
I do not know, no.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Berge, did you have another question?
Oh, no, sorry.
That's okay. Thank you. Thank you, Councilmember Beaton. Are there any other questions from council for the staff, for Mr. Allen or for Ms. Ness? Any other questions from council? All right, I don't see any. We will open this item up to the public and then allow the applicant to speak first if they choose to. Good evening, Mr. Hagan.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you. If you could speak just a little louder, that would be great.
Okay. Good evening, council members. My name is Gunnar Hagan of 4509 Clover Drive in Eau Claire. I'm one-third owner of HK Development. Thanks again for listening to a proposal on this project on Eau Claire's south side. I understand that our narrative was a bit long, so I just want to highlight and possibly reiterate some of our main points. One of our biggest modifications to our project was the incorporation of 10% of our total units to affordable and workforce. After meeting with Judy Mosley and Susan Wolfgram of the Jonah Affordable Task Force, we contracted a new architect out of Chicago that could help with designing buildings that would assist in modifying our rent structure to allow for this affordable and workforce housing, of which 5% of those will allocate to the incomes of the 60% AMI, and an additional 5% for the 80 to 100. This allocation was even better than what city staff recommended as workforce housing of that 80 to 120. And then as far as allocating those percentages, we're going to start with phase one and allocate it across the whole project, just to provide diversification in all the buildings with mixed incomes. We just don't want to segregate anybody into one building. We just kind of want a little bit in all the units across the board, since this seems to be the trend of multifamilies across the nation. Moving on, another modification that we had was the 16 acres of park space we're dedicating that'll have building restrictions on it, which we won't be able to build on. So the tenants of all the residents and even lots 2 and 3 will have access to. Lots 2 and 3 will have direct access from the north down to them. And since we've changed lots 2 and 3 from C3 to R3, the change will help lessen the density moving east, or west, I'm sorry. Then I guess as far as to address the potential developments on lots 1, 2, and 3, we've spoken with interested people, but nothing has been confirmed, nothing put in writing, because we just need the necessary zoning for somebody to put pen to paper and commit to putting something there. And then let's see, and just moving forward, the economic impact that this project will bring to Eau Claire, we're estimating it to be 40 to 50 million total build out, which could bring approximately 1.2 worth of annual taxes to the city. This amount would put, us within the top 5 taxpayers behind Mayo and Menards. Furthermore, millions will be spent locally on added renovations, repair, possible hotel tax, and residential spending, and not to mention added utility revenue. I guess we've covered multiple times with the concerns of traffic, but with the traffic study and the phasing, we feel that there are no big issues at this time. Our engineer, Mark Erickson, will go into more depth on that. And furthermore, we've spoken with Deputy Chief Alan Bertrand, who stated at this time there's no big concerns, but once we get into site planning, we'll have to meet again. And then lastly, we've spoken with the adjoining westerly neighbor. We've extended an olive branch to purchase his land, but of course it was not accepted. Meanwhile, if the concern is building on DES, if somebody wants to come in and buy that, they're more than welcome to. We've included the traffic study for up to 180 units on his property, so it's not like we're cutting him off. I guess in addition, we're just trying to look at what our project is. We're currently in the city. It's my understanding that the westerly neighbor isn't petitioned to be in the city. So I guess just need to concentrate on what's in front of us. In closing, I feel this is a great project and will add a great value to the city. So me, along with all my neighboring business owners, recommend that the city council approve this project so we can move forward in the next phasing. questions, I can take those at those times. If not, I can pass it on to our engineer, Mark.
Thank you, Mr. Hagan. Just one moment to see if there's any questions from council. Any questions from council for the applicant? I don't see any. Well, excuse me one second. Councilmember Berge.
Thank you, Council President. And thank you, Mr. Hagan, for bringing forth another project. It's nice to see that. I was just wondering if you talked to the county park at all in Lowe's Creek, if you communicated with them, if they had any feedback on your project.
Yes, I spoke with the park director, and at that time, his comment was just to let the city work it out. They didn't want to really get involved.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Berge. Any other questions from council for Mr. Hagan? I'm not seeing any. If we have any other questions, we'll get back to you, okay? Thank you,
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Hagan. Mr. Erickson.
Good day, folks. This is Mark Erickson. Can you hear me fine?
Yep.
Yep. I'm going to turn down my speaker so I don't get a reverb here. I apologize. Folks, thank you very much for reconsidering this project in the proposed development, the rezoning, and the general development plan. I just want to start off with some things that I don't want to rehash too hard, but talk about the park and passive recreative space. We are sitting at nearly a 1-to-1 ratio of passive open space to be dedicated and deed restricted to build on to the actual R3 zoning district. That's always a good thing. I don't know if there's many others in town that can state that boastfully. The other thing that is, and that, like Gunnar and Mr. Allen also mentioned, that will be useful for lots 2 and 3 on the north side of the road, as well as 4. Once again, this has been a change in the rezoning. We are looking to have lots 2 and 3 be rezoned as this project to be R3P from the originally proposed in December C3P. This helps identify that transition from the commercial down towards residential use. As Leah so well defined everything with regards to traffic, I guess I just want to state that we are exceeding the expectations of most developments with understanding traffic on this project. As you may well know, the IR has been done, initial review, and then proceeded to move forward with the TIA. Those 2 elements are relatively and commonly dealt with after approval has been made. With regards to traffic, you know, the thing about the study at full build out in 2035 is it does not show any, Ms. Ness could correct me on this, doesn't show any modifications or improvements to Lorch. It is as it stands today, which would generate that queue distance. Timing in the lights, dedicated turn lanes, the eastbound left turn movements in a capital improvements project would also, I think, assist in making that a smoother route or level of service of a higher grade. With regards to the cross sections of the street, Ms. Ness did touch on it. Our proposed development will have the normal width street that was handed to us by the city engineering department, as well as we'll have a 12-foot wide asphaltic bike path along the south side of Lorch, which is our understanding will run essentially some format of direction easterly on Lorch Avenue to help connect with the whole trail system of the asphaltic bike path. So we're doing what we perceive to be something that's going to be in the scope of Lorch Avenue's existing road corridors improvements as the future goes on. So, not to get too long with it here, but like Mr. Allen stated, we're looking at the comp plan. We are trying to diversify this and make it better with essentially 3 facets of types of housing offered out there. One being the apartment buildings of, call it larger, higher density units, transitioning westerly to moving to apartment buildings of the medium to lower density, and then ultimately now this northern lots 2 and 3 being a transition to senior housing of a different format, different type of demand on the overall system of the public utilities and traffic related elements. All the residential areas in this development will be adjacent to or connected to passive natural recreational space. Then when we look at the elements related to Objective 4 of the Policy A, there's essentially 9 elements there. The streets and utilities that are immediately adjacent either will be improved, as in Lorch, the aforementioned capital improvement project, or the public and the water that are already currently available at the terminus of today's Lorch are adequate. There'll be the next element is the ability that the area fits with the neighborhood and absorb the additional density. We believe that there's 2 points of this to be true. The streets and the infrastructure I just mentioned, as well as the amount of passive and rec space that is available that would help keep this community, well, really a community. It's going to be right there in its backyard. It'll be easily provided and easily accessible to all these residents. Element 3 of that is the adequate access. Not to keep rehashing it, but the TIA that was formulated and submitted identifies that the serviceability or the level of serviceability through this Lorch corridor is adequate, meets the city standards, as well as the fire department and our discussions with them did not see at this time any direct impacts or elements of impacts to fire, rescue, emergency services. Each building as they come forth with the site plan will be reviewed by the fire department as well, and then we'll get into the nuts and bolts of how that building or that facility is then immediately accessed through a fire rescue coordination system and make it really easy for them like we do all of our commercial aspects of site planning. Transportation is not currently serviced in this area. The nearest transportation facility or route would be on Gulf Road. As this development blossoms and traffic and public transportation warrants, traffic of mass transportation or bus routes or what have you may alter and may then eventually service this area. Housing will be immediately adjacent to employment opportunities. The Lorch corridor is currently a pretty well developed commercial area with a smattering of different opportunities for employment. Florian or Action City, Metropolis, you folks all know the routine, but it's going to be as immediately adjacent to those employment opportunities as one could be. When we talk about schools, we are close to schools. We're not on top of schools, but we're in the close proximity of schools. This development is close to a lot of the schools and several of the other developments south of 93 or even south on 53. So we figured we were pretty good there. Is this compatible with the adjacent lands? We once again believe it is, as well as when we move from east to west on the site, we're trying to mimic the comprehensive plan and lessening the density, the massing, the scaling, the overall hugeness of the site, if you would like to call it that. This site is suitable for construction. We feel that working with the natural features, whether it's the existing conditions of how the land slopes and falls off to the south down to the esteemed Lois Creek, or the northern boundary being I-94 or the immediately adjacent east commercial areas, we feel that this site is very suitable and fits in pretty darn nice. 9 would be more of a pedestrian and bicycle connectivity, which we already talked about, a 12-foot wide asphalt bike path on the south side. There'll be a 5-foot wide traditional concrete sidewalk on the north side of our end of the development for Lorch and what we perceive to happen down the CIP project. I know I'm going kind of fast. I don't want Terry to tie me out in 5 minutes, so I apologize, President. When we look at the GDP, the General Development Plan, we find that, like Mr. Allen stated, this conforms to the density. We're less than what's allowed without asking for any more, 6.5 units per acre. We feel that this is also in conformance with the provisions of Chapter 18. Once again, the site is suitable for development. We believe that truly. It's compatible with the land, the adjacent lands, and any other developable lands. When I say that is, this project doesn't have a lot of, let's call it, north and south direction or horizontal area south of Lorch Road. We can't change the transition, the density, moving from Lorch as we're proposing it south. It just doesn't have enough real estate. We are taking our transition from east to west. You've already heard me say that before. I apologize. Site planning, we have dealt with many of the site planning principles to make sure that this is a fully thought out and well executed project and how it will proceed. This project, as we see, with the few caveats that Mr. Allen brought up, will meet or exceed the city's design standards. The two elements that we would incorporate in the PUD is the potential for a building height to exceed, depending on some grading on the south face of those 60 unit buildings. The north face adjacent to Lorch would not have that massing, but that would just be a possibility. The other design standard would be the potential for the front yard impervious. Right now we don't have them developed into individual lots. Therefore, it's a little bit hard to analyze the amount of a lot area and the amount of impervious in the front yards. And that goes along with the design manual. We have more than 40% of the front yard in impervious. It's really a little bit of that gray matter. If it was a real lot laid out there, then we'd probably be close to it. If we look at it as a massive land and impervious surface in the front yard, it'd be a little different. So I'm almost done. I apologize, folks. Once again, the availability of public utility on and off site related to traffic, sewer, water, fire protection is all covered. We believe we've already discussed that. Negative impacts are not to be expected, produced, or felt by this site or from adjacent neighbors and their usages. And, you know, to follow it up with the last thing is, truly believe this is in conformance with the comprehensive plan as it was laid forth years ago, and we're just working on making this thing fit in there smoothly and adequately to work out for everybody's sake, the city and the developer, and hopefully this nice new community that will come on the horizon here. Thank you for your time in this decision, Council, and if you have any questions, I'll be on.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Erickson. Let me check with Council to see if there's any questions. Any questions from Council for Mr. Erickson? I don't see any questions. Thank you. All right. If there are no other questions from Council in regards to the applicants or the staff, I will open it up to the public for discussion. Mr. Fraze or Mrs. Fraze? Mr. or Mrs. Fraze? Hello?
Are you able to hear me?
Yep, we can hear you. Mr. Fraze?
Yes, can you hear me now?
Yep, we can hear you fine. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. My name is Dean Fraze. I live on Highway 53, 7155 Highway 53. I'm getting a little feedback here. I'm going to see if I can figure it out. But are you guys hearing me all right?
We're hearing you fine, yep.
Okay, I'll just deal with it. So I see the slide is still on there that I wanted the committee to see. I'll give you a little description here. The blue portion, of course, is the development question, and the westerly end of that, the brown field, is my property. The blue square, well, it looks like half of that is usable, and the bottom half is well, I've been there since I was a kid, but it's pretty much swamp. So, you know, it shows you the proportions of the land. They're like one joined at the hip. So I hate to see these two lands get, you know, or especially get pinched off. The developer wants, you know, these multifamily dwellings in there, I believe 3 stories high. Back in December, he proposed to have 280 units, and he revised that to the development we see now, and it is still 280 units. Without lots 1, 2, and 3. Now, lots 1, I saw somewhere that they wanted to be a convention center. And I hate to point out names in that, but it looked like Florian Gardens wants to put a convention center there, which is great, you know. I want to see this land developed just as much as anybody else. But you can see my concerns on the traffic issue. When I believe it was Miss Ness was up there telling her traffic study, you know, a whole lot of numbers and figures in this, but she also said about plenty of times, she said maybe plenty of times, and she said estimate plenty of times. It really, really concerns me on this traffic with all the big multifamily dwellings going in before it approaches mine. The unique layout of the land, the property in question, the development will be most likely developed before mine. So what I'm proposing is, and if the council would, you know, take into question, they're going to do their development in phases. And it looks like after each phase, there's plenty of time to do another traffic study. So, you know, phase 1, and I believe lot 1 will be finished about the same time, and then I don't see why a traffic study could be done at that time. And then so on after phase 2, phase 3, and so on. Because right now I do not think that the traffic analysis has a, you know, they're just guessing. So I'm very, very concerned on the traffic, even though I want to see the land developed just as much as anybody. The affordability housing thing, they can still do that. But I don't want to see the city lose out on taxes either if mine gets pinched off. So, anyway, I think I've showed my concerns.
Sure.
And if anybody has any questions, and as far as the annexation part of it, that's, you know, that's not a real big concern. That can be done easily. So if there's any questions, I'll hang on.
All right, thank you, Mr. Fraze. Is there any questions from council? Any questions from council for Mr. Fraze? I don't see any questions. I appreciate you calling in.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Wolfgram, good evening.
Good evening. Again, my name is Susan Wolfgram. I sit on the Plan Commission and I'm co-chair of Jonah's Affordable Housing Task Force. I live at 550 Graham Avenue in Eau Claire. President Weldon, members of the City Council, I strongly support the rezoning of properties requests from TR1A to C3P and R3P and the other asks. I had originally voted no at Plan Commission on December 2nd, 2019, premised primarily on 2 things. Number 1, The first was that our multifamily design manual is guided by ensuring that affordability and sustainability will be integrated in new projects. There had been no real commitment to affordability in the first presentation. The second, related to the first, is that in this area are many low-wage part-time workers. Fleet Farm, Action City, Florian Gardens, Metropolis Hotels, Gino's Pizza, and others. These workers are priced out of housing near their workplaces, many spending 40 to 50% of their income on housing. I was not able in good conscience to vote yes without a commitment to a certain percentage of workforce housing units. Since that initial presentation, I want to acknowledge Mr. Hagan's willingness to collaborate with community members, including our Jonah Affordable Housing Task Force. Mr. Hagan worked hard at finding a way to commit 10% of his units to workforce housing, targeting renters earning 60 to 100% of the AMI and making a contribution to meeting the need of workers in this area to our community. Mr. Hagan provided multiple letters of support from his business neighbors who all support his development. I want to particularly highlight Benny Anderson, Resort General Manager of Action City, who stated in his letter that, quote unquote, the initial reaction from our staff was excitement about being able to have a place where they could walk to work from, end quote. Mr. Hagan is demonstrating with these changes this evening that he is a community stakeholder, admittedly having strong roots in the Eau Claire area spanning over 50 years. Our city can then best support him by being flexible and supportive of the rezoning to C3P and R3P and the other requests. I encourage you to vote yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Wolfgram. Let me just check to see if there's any questions. Any questions from council for Ms. Wolfgram? I don't see any. Thank you very much. Mr. Erickson, did you have something you wanted to add?
Good evening again, council members. Mark Erickson here, and I don't want to use up all the time of your preciousness here. I guess a couple things to just address more thoroughly and formally with the adjacent westerly property owner and make clear this subdivision, the proposed land that we're talking about off of Lorch Avenue for HK development, is only going to have 220 residential units as it's stated right now, not 280, 228. There's actually accommodations to understand how the traffic from his potential future development, him or whomever may occupy or own that land at that time, to have a 180 units to however they want to lay that out to be adequately serving this whole development through Lorch and onward. With that being said, if there was a need, a desire, or wishes to have that westerly adjacent land exceed the 180, they would just do a simple amendment to an already approved TIA done by HK Development and approved by the City of Eau Claire. Just an amendment of any additional traffic above that 180. That piece of land has already been allocated to allow 180 units. In addition, off-site projections from what potentially could be an expansion of the Florian Garden area and or the adjacent lot south of the Metropolis building off of Fairview Drive have been part of this TIA's accounting for full build-out in 2035. So we are taking a good, I don't want to call it a guess, an engineering evaluation of how traffic and or the build-out will be in that time period of 2035. So I just wanted to bring that back up. The last building as the forecasted schedule for HK Development to have happen on Phase 6 would most likely occur in the year of 2031. So the TIA goes out to 2035, and we'll be, then this, just for sake of a TIA being done after every phase is a little repetitiveness where we know where we need to be, and then we know where we're going to be in 2035. If things alter in the density of either this land, adjacent lands, those TIAs would be, I think Ms. Ness could contend to this, would be an amendment of what's already been approved to accommodate for those increased volumes. I apologize for coming back on, but I thank you very much once again for your time. I just need to lend a little clarification there to that topic.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Erickson. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak to this agenda item? If so, please click on the icon to raise your hand. Again, if there's anyone else that wishes to speak to this agenda item. Seeing none, we will move on to agenda item number 4, which is a public hearing on a resolution approving a site plan in P Public District to allow a service center and site improvements to Xcel Energy Center located at 1501 Black Avenue. Mr. Allen, are you there?
Indeed. Thank you, Council President Weld and members of the council. Again, the item before you tonight is a request to approve a general development site plan for Xcel Energy and their expansion located on Black Avenue. Move to the next slide. Here's the aerial of the current site in its entirety. We move to the next slide, please. And here's the proposed addition expansion to the proposed site. Cedar Corporation is the architect and engineer record on behalf of Xcel Energy, and they're requesting, again, approval of a site plan for a property within the P Public Zoning District here located at 51 Black Avenue. Immediately to the west is Quick Trip, and to the north are some one current hotel and a hotel under development. Site plan is required to be reviewed by the Planning Commission and now the City Council because it is located in the P Public Zoning District. And this is before the Planning Commission at their meeting last week. It is before you with a unanimous recommendation of approval. A site plan shows 2 buildings and a future proposed addition. The applicant has proposed a phase 1 for a service center building, approximately 29,700 square feet, and a cold storage building, approximately 9,000 square feet. Phase 2 would add an approximate 28,300 square foot building addition to be constructed south of this phase 1 service center building. There are 46 parking stalls, 4 accessible stalls, and 4 bike parking spaces. The parking requirement is based on employee needs, and work vehicles will be parked on site throughout the day. There is a large portion of the developed area will have concrete or asphalt. However, the applicant is also proposing a large area to be gravel as the kind of the lighter gray area you see to the essentially to the north and east. This would primarily be for storage of equipment and vehicles, not for day-to-day parking area or in and out parking use. That does require have a waiver, we call a permanent waiver of the required parking area or paving area, excuse me. Landscape plan. I'm going to jump ahead 2 more slides, please. Thank you. A little bit faded here. You can see perimeter landscape planting primarily to the east there as it gets into more of the rural residential area to the east. Landscape plan does show street trees and trees along the eastern property, as I noted, to screen from the neighboring properties. Exterior lighting and a dumpster enclosure will also need to be provided. They'll need to comply with city code. CSM, Certified Survey Map, has been submitted for the project as well. And as it stands, that can be administratively approved by staff. Again, there's some additional information provided in the narrative from Cedar Corporation. And with that, I believe the applicant may be on the line as well. But again, the property overall, I did not mention earlier, is about 14 acres in size. And again, it is currently zoned in public and is retaining that again. But with a site plan in the P public zoning district, it does go both to the Plan Commission and here to City Council before you this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. Are there any questions from council for Mr. Allen? Any questions from council? Councilmember Berge.
Thank you, Council President. This question is more from my understanding and to clear up just some things for me, but I'm curious about how, so it's P public zoning, and yet it appears that a private company is going to build on it, and how that, is that correct? So, and I guess as a follow-up, so does the city own this land, or does Xcel own this land?
Very good question. Actually, Xcel does own it. Actually, previously formerly known as Northern States Power Company, but Xcel does own the property. And actually, in the zoning code, public utilities is what would define Xcel Energy, along with other sole source providers such as AT&T, Charter Spectrum, and other such utilities. So by definition, it is designated a public utility, and public utilities and public services are permitted uses in the key public zoning district. So that's where all of that comes together, and that's what you see before you here this evening. So as a public utility, they are permitted use in the P public zoning district. And again, I know I've mentioned it to others who have asked a similar question that, again, if it were in commercial zoning district, for example, typically would just be a site plan before the Plan Commission. So there's kind of an added benefit that because it is in the P public zoning district, in this case, it's a site plan both before the Plan Commission and then final authority for City Council here.
Okay, that makes sense. So so it's privately owned, but because it's public utility, it's zoned public.
Correct, exactly, yes.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Allen.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Berge. Any other questions from council for Mr. Allen? Seeing none, I will open it up to the public or to the applicant. I did see Mr. Schreiber on there. Did you wish to? Good evening, Mr. Schreiber. Mr. Schreiber?
Can you guys hear it?
Yep, we can hear you. Thank you.
City Council and President, for taking a look at our resolution approving our site plan tonight. I think Scott did a very good job of summarizing the project. I don't really have anything much to add to it. The only thing I wanted to state is we do have our other plans going off to the state authorities for the architectural, as well as we have gotten approval from the Wisconsin DNR for the notice of intent. So our erosion control and our stormwater has been taken care of on that aspect, and we are working with staff to make changes in accordance to what the city requirements are, et cetera.
Okay.
And I'll stay on for any questions.
Is there any questions for Mr. Schreiber from council? Okay, are there any questions from council for Mr. Schreiber in regards to agenda item number 4? I don't see any questions. We appreciate you reaching out.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you, Mr. Schreiber. So we'll open up to the public. If there's anyone here that wishes to speak to this agenda item, please click on the raise your hand icon on the screen. Again, if there's anyone that wishes to speak to this agenda item. Seeing none, we will move on to agenda item number 5, which is a public hearing on a charter ordinance relating to the city council and the reapportionment of the automatic districts of the city of Eau Claire. Ms. Reapel, good evening.
Good evening. So the Weiss annexation is on the council agenda for tomorrow. Upon approval of that, we will need to create Ward 79. The Weiss property is in the 93rd Assembly District, and the adjacent city property is in the 91st Assembly District, which means we need to create the new ward. There is one resolution creating the new ward, and then an ordinance adding it to Aldermanic District Number 4. The polling place for this ward will be Calvary Church.
All right, thank you. Are there any questions for Ms. Reapel from council? I don't see any questions. Again, if there anyone here, anyone that is joining us on WebEx that wishes to make a comment or ask a question in regards to agenda item number 5, please raise your hand. Again, I'll ask if there's anyone that wishes to speak to this agenda item. Seeing none, we will I guess move on to the public comment period. For those of you that wish to speak this evening, we would ask that you also raise your hand and click on the icon on your screen, and I will call on you in the order in which you sign up. Again, please state your name and the city and your city of Eau Claire address. The public comment period is for those living or working in the city. Please note that your thoughts or ideas should be regarding issues or concerns of citywide application, and please do not comment on issues that were on tonight's agenda, as council wants and needs to hear those comments during the noticed hearing or discussion. Is there anyone that wishes to speak during the public commentary period? Again, I'll ask if there's anyone that wishes to speak to during the public commentary period. Seeing none, we will close the public portion of this council meeting. And I want to thank everyone joining us remotely and throughout the city. And certainly my fellow council members. I appreciate all of your time and input. If there is no objection, and I'll give you all a second to raise your hand if there is objection from council members to adjourn. Seeing no objection, we are adjourned. Thank you.
The Eau Claire City Council meeting will return in a moment. Newsworks is made possible by continuing community support. If you would like to volunteer or make a donation, please contact us via phone at 715-839-5067 or online at valleymediaworks.org.
Eau Claire City Council is now in session. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam City Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Anderson.
Here.
Beaton.
Here.
Berge.
Here.
Christofferson.
Here.
Emmanuel. Gregert.
Here.
Klinkhammer.
Here.
Lorch.
Here.
Weld.
Here.
Worthman.
Here.
You try Catherine again.
Emmanuel. Councilmember Emmanuel.
Oh. I'm here.
Okay. Thank you, and welcome to our Tuesday, April 14th legislative session of the Eau Claire City Council. Also, thank you to the residents that joined us last night for our virtual meeting, and your comments and thoughts during our public hearings and all those that reached out to us today. For everyone that is logged in to WebEx for today's meeting, please note that you will only be able to listen, and we encourage all of you to join this meeting with us throughout the afternoon. During our legislative session this afternoon, the council members will be participating either remotely or in person to deliberate and take action on the agenda items before us today. City staff and council members have spent a great deal of time preparing for this meeting, and I have a sincere appreciation for their continued work and dedication to this community. I also want to thank Valley Media Works and their devoted staff for live streaming this meeting. To watch, please visit valleymediaworks.org or visit Channel 994 on Spectrum Cable. The first item of business is an update from our city manager, and welcome Mr. Peters to the podium.
Good afternoon, Council President Weld and members of the City Council, and thank you for this opportunity to talk a little bit about where we're at and some of the things that we've done in response to the COVID-19 crisis that the community is facing. Tonight we're going to talk just about things that the city has done, and there's a tremendous amount of work that's being done through an incident command system which the city is supporting with personnel and other resources. The way to stay informed on the actual crisis itself and the things that are being done through that incident command system, which is being led by our health department and the health department director, Lisa McKeesey, is several ways. First, I would encourage people to be looking at the website, which is coronavirus.eauclairhealthdepartment.org. There are also live updates on every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday afternoon at 3:30. And there's also closed captioning for those updates. There's also a call center that's available for people who want information about the community's response to COVID-19, and that phone number is 715-831-7425. There's also a Facebook page that is the Eau Claire Health Department, and there's also a hashtag for Stop the Spread Eau Claire or Stop the Spread EC. So plenty of ways for people to stay connected and informed about the status of the disease in our community, as well as the response that we have to the disease that is in and about and around in our community. So just a couple of quick things to provide some update. Again, I referenced that there's a command structure that's in place that is managing this event. It's a very formalized and structured command structure. And I haven't done a count on it, but there's got to be well over 100 people from not only the health department, but the city and the county and Altoona and various other agencies that are helping to manage this event. And it has a command staff, which has a public information section and a liaison and safety and emergency operations center and legal. There's a whole operation division, which is taking care of community services and healthcare preparedness and field ops and running that phone bank and a whole bunch of other things. And there's a whole group of people that are dedicated to planning for this event, and not only taking the plans that had been prepared before the event and implementing them, but adapting and adjusting those plans to the changing situation. And they're working on resources and situation reports and documents, and of course that long-term planning. Logistics is another whole section of this incident command structure. It's looking at supplies and personal protective equipment and facilities, working with donations and volunteers. And then we can't forget the finances. This is going to cost money. And there's also a lot of opportunities for funding sources, both federally and state. And so there's a lot of work that's going into how to track reimbursements, how to track costs, how to track claims, and just be able to understand the financial impact of this to our community, as well as get resources to help people with that. So it's a complex but well-organized infrastructure that's in place. And again, if you want very specifics about what's happening within that infrastructure, please go to those ways of staying informed that I talked about earlier. In terms of our specific response as a city and things that we're doing, certainly the election, which happened last week, and I think we've talked about that, and I certainly just want to lift that up so that we can, if you know that that's there, and if you have any questions about what we did or didn't do with the elections, we can talk about it. But a lot of creative thought process went into the elections with basically outdoor early voting option and the things we did to protect the employees and protect the voters during that process. In terms of services that have been impacted for the city of Eau Claire, we've relatively recently discontinued the UW Eau Claire transit routes. These were 2 transit routes that, with the university going offline for all practical purposes from people in the community, the ridership was just not there to support it. And there's revenue that we will lose from that agreement, but we felt it was the appropriate thing to do to take those transit routes offline. We've also extended and changed the rules for extended guest stays that are in hotel work. So people who are staying in hotels, there's a definition of an extended stay, and because we now have contracted workers and others, we've changed that definition so that people can stay in those hotel rooms longer than they would have otherwise been able to do. There's been an agreement with Hobbs, which is now being used for people that are experiencing homelessness, and that started out as a nighttime use, and it's now been expanded to a daytime use and a nighttime use. We've made some adjustments to being able to reissue beer and wine licenses if you've had an event that had to be rescheduled and had already been approved by the City Council. Carson Park parking hours were changed to accommodate some mail parking. It's a littler thing, but it's a really big thing for those people that were impacted, but we've been able to work with Feed My People at Park Towers and have food delivery to their doors every 2 weeks, not only for food, but also for their pet care needs. So that's kind of one of those little adjustments. And from a temporarily, we've stopped replacing water meters in businesses and people's homes. So those are just a few of the operational things that have happened. In terms of online services, we're in the process of revamping our website so that it has more focus with the online services that are there. We've been able to implement an electronic inspection program and an online permitting and planning review process. This is important because the developers in the community are still moving forward, and they want to move forward with development in this community. And it's important that we're able to facilitate that development in ways that we can do that online. So within a few weeks, we've been able to put those inspections and those permitting processes online. We've created a new online bulletin board, which takes the place of the public bulletin board, which is usually down at City Hall, where really notices are tacked up on a board, and we've made an electronic version for that. We're doing remote payroll, remote processing of our bills. You can now get your licensing online, and of course the remote meetings, which you had your really first one of last night, and seems to be working and going along. In terms of operationally, we've adjusted some schedules for our police officers so that they're more staggered and there isn't as much overlap. We've waived the fares for the transit, and then also implemented some driver segregation, that's the long term, separation guidelines to separate the passengers from the drivers. We had some adjustments to the election pay practices. We've authorized 10 additional temporary firefighters. We've done some downtown changes to parking to accommodate the curbside pickup at the restaurants. We have backfilled the transit drivers with some of our other drivers that have getting them the appropriate CDL certificate. We're doing a lot of extra cleaning of our buildings and our vehicles and transfer center, and we've done a lot of adjustment to alternate work schedules, and we have about 150 people that are working from home. We've also revised our benefit and leave policies, certainly to comply with the laws that have been changing, but we've also provided for some expanded vacation benefits and relaxed the use of that, as well as the times and places that sick leave can use. I think we're one of the few employers that are allowing employees to use sick leave if they have a documented underlying condition. So that's a benefit that goes certainly beyond what is atypical or was in some of the federal or state legislation. But if someone has an underlying condition, they're able to use their sick leave if it's documented. And then we're complying again with the family, medical, and military leave basis that are related to COVID-19. And we're waiving a proration of the employer debt benefits if someone goes into an unpaid status. We've had a lot of work hour adjustments, and then we've currently expanded the vacation donation policy and the sick leave donation policy. At this time, all of our employees have work and all of our employees have child care, and it's something we're dealing with on a case-by-case basis. We don't view that this is a fixed point in time, and we've worked with our benefits packages so that people are able to work but also adjust and deal with the family situations that are related to COVID-19. From a financial perspective, I think this is an important one, and I don't know that you were aware of this one yet because it's relatively new, but we've entered into a cost-sharing arrangement with the county. So there's a lot of extra expense, and the health department has a fixed budget that was set last fall that they have, but there's going to be extra expenses related to this, and so we've agreed with the county to share those expenses, those extra expenses related to this response on a 60-40 basis, which is the same as we currently fund the health department. So the county would be picking up 60% of the expense and the city would be picking up 40% of the expense. So that is an agreement that we've put in place so that we're able to have that cost sharing agreement as those expenses continue to grow as we respond to the event. We've ceased assessing utility late fees. We've deferred the payments on the revolving loan fund for 90 days. We're also deferring room tax payments and waiving any late fees with that. And at the same time, even though we're not going to be receiving the room tax from the hotels, we're continuing to pay Visit Eau Claire their share of that revenue so they can continue to operate and promote the community. And we're also waiving some of the late fees and fines that are associated with some of the parking tickets. So what are some of our next steps? I think it's very important that we remain flexible and we have to be adapting to the changing conditions. This is all new for all of us. And we have to understand the cost and the lost revenue. So we're putting time and effort into understanding and tracking what the additional costs are, as well as trying to get a handle on what our lost revenues are going to be. So as we go through this year, we're going to have that difficult combination of increased expenses and actually decreased revenue. And so, we're only a few weeks into this, but just know that we're working hard to understand that and be able to adapt and adjust to that as we come into the end of the year. It might seem mundane, but I want to talk about yard waste. We're a community of doers, and I know there's people that are out there, perhaps not this weekend with the snow that was there, but people are raking up their yards, they're sprucing it up. I was talking to Josh Box last week. He said that yard waste collection across the country is up 184%. So people are cleaning up their yard. That means they need a place to take it. And working with the Box family and Box Sanitation, they have graciously continuing the yard waste site that we have up on Jeffers Road, and it actually will be opening up tomorrow. We're very grateful for that partnership, and with this increased volume of yard waste and the coronavirus situation, we're working with them to help that to be a safe situation for not only the people dropping off their yard waste, but also for those people who are working it. Again, that opens up tomorrow, and it's Monday and Wednesday and Saturdays from 10 to 5. And also the haulers have committed to still doing their curbside yard waste pickup, and that's going to occur between May 4th and May 8th. So the usual waste hauling curbside pickup is going to happen on May 4th through May 8th. In addition, things that we're working on and looking forward at is development projects. I mentioned before that it's important that we make sure that the developers who are still working to have projects in our community are able to do that. So far, all the projects that have been in the pipeline, working with us directly as a city, are still there, and we are working with those developers so that they can proceed with their development projects. We're also preparing for the peak or the surge, as it's sometimes called. Although cases have been stable, for the last few days, it's still not known whether we have a peak or a surge ahead of us. But we do know at some point there will be an easing of the safer at home order. So there's a lot of preparation, not only within the incident command structure, but within our own organization to be prepared for that surge or peak, but as well as preparing for how we move forward once there's an easing of that safer at home order. There's also a lot of work going into the economic recovery. Coordination is happening, and again, work within the incident command system to talk about how do we ease these safer at home orders, how do we have our economic recovery, and how do we do that with responsible health practices. So a lot of work and thought process is going into that as we move through the crisis. And then just a reminder that our local businesses are struggling. And when the stimulus checks come, certainly encourage people to use that locally and support their local businesses. Those checks are intended to stimulate the economy, and there's no better place than to have that stimulation of the economy happen right here locally within our own region. And I don't say that just within the city of Eau Claire, but certainly within our region. So certainly look for you to spend and support the local businesses. I guess I would just wrap it up by saying that this is hard. It is a major disruption in all of our lives, and we're struggling, every one of us, to do the best we can every day. And I know that we're all looking forward to this next phase. And if we have a surge, we have to go through that. But at some point, it will be over. But for now, it's very, very important that we continue to maintain our small circles of contact. And it's as important as ever that we do that. And I just offer to people that it's an opportunity for you to connect. It's an opportunity to a lot of things we don't get to do that we normally do. It's an opportunity to connect with your family, to revisit certain traditions, perhaps family games, sewing masks, cooking, doing crafts. It's also a time for a lot of alternate, routines. The way we get our fitness. I had mentioned this before, but I had no idea my neighborhood had so many dogs. And I've got to believe the dogs are sleeping really well at night because they are getting an awful lot of exercise. And it also appears there's an awful lot of cleaning and organization going on out there. Attics and basements and closets, but what a great time to be able to do that as a family and to share. So please, I would ask that you lift up and be grateful for all the workers, the public sector workers, the private sector workers, the healthcare workers. These are the people on the front lines that are getting us through this. And so anything you can do to lift them up and show your gratitude to them, which includes staying in your small circles so that you can help keep them healthy. And as Ms. Kesey will tell you, to flatten the curve, that is very much appreciated by the people that are on the front lines working this. So maintain your small groups, your social distancing. Again, it is still very, very important that we keep our attention and our focus on this. The whole situation requires focus. It requires patience, it requires kindness, and it requires grace. So please be patient and kind with one another as we tough this out. Have grace for this situation because it's not something that any of us asked for. And have grace with those that are around us and those that we're living with very closely, probably more than we're used to. And with that, together, we will get through this.
Thank you, Mr. Peters. Certainly a lot going on. Appreciate all your work and all of our staff and everyone else that's helping getting it done. So,
Certainly open any questions.
Sure. Is there any questions from council? Just one moment. Councilmember Emmanuel.
Thank you, Council President Weld, and thank you, City Manager Peters. I want to uplift and compliment your exceptional leadership. I'm not surprised whatsoever, and I'm sorry that this is a really high-stakes capstone for your career, and I feel very lucky that we have you to help us lead us through this. One of the questions I had is around refinancing. I know some local government units are looking to refinance even CIP projects because either refinancing or just straight out borrowing ahead of time because the rates are low, and wondering if the city is looking into that.
Yes, we are looking at the financial, and certainly the cash flow is also something we have to look at. As part of that analysis to look at, that we're having increased expenses, we're going to have decreased revenues, and making sure that we have the working capital and the cash flow to be able to meet our obligations, as well as looking at what is the best way to be working with our debt and our future debt that we have with the CIP. So yeah, that is part of that's a really good question, by the way, and thank you for it. It is certainly part of that financial analysis that our finance department is working on, in addition to the work that they're doing for the incident command system.
Okay, thank you. And the other item I just wanted to lift up my appreciation for is the assurance that everybody either is working and also has support for child care related reasons and the extenuation of definitions such as FMLA so that people are experiencing the best support they can. So thank you for making those decisions administratively, and thank you for communicating that with council.
Thank you, and I think it's an opportunity to perhaps just vocalize and verbalize that, you know, we are a service organization of employees, and this doesn't work if it doesn't work for our employees. And we recognize that every employee has a unique situation and also a obligation to public service. And there's a lot that goes into being able to take care of your family at the same time you can take care of the community. So we're trying to strike the right balance there. And as I said earlier, you know, we're monitoring that and open to being flexible and adaptive to that as the conditions change.
Thank you, Council Vice President. Is there any other questions from council from City Manager Peters? I don't see any.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yep, all right, so we'll move on to our next item of business, which is the consent agenda. Do council members have any questions regarding the consent agenda or wish to remove any item for separate consideration? And I'm not seeing any questions. So then a motion by Councilmember Berge and seconded by Councilmember Lohr. The consent agenda has been moved, and discussion. Discussion is in order. Sorry. Is there any discussion in regards to the consent agenda? Seeing none, Madam City Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Anderson.
Aye.
Beaton.
Aye.
Berge.
Aye.
Christofferson.
Aye.
Emmanuel.
Aye.
Gregert.
Aye.
Klinkhammer.
Aye.
Lohr.
Aye.
Weld.
Aye.
Worthman.
Aye.
And the consent agenda is passed unanimously. We have two proclamations this evening. And the first one is in recognition of National Public Health Week, and if Eau Claire City County Health Director, Ms. Giese, could meet me at the podium. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I'm going to actually invite you on this side. So difficult for words alone to express our appreciation for our public health professionals and all that they do for our community, our state, and our nation. And I'm honored to share this proclamation with Ms. Giese and her staff recognizing National Public Health Week. It is our mission in the City of Eau Claire to assure the common good through services essential for a safe, sustainable, engaged, and healthy community. And whereas the American Public Health Association, through its sponsorship of National Public Health Week, has educated the public, policymakers, and public health professionals about issues important to improving the public's health and public health professionals help communities prevent, prepare for, withstand, and recover from the impact of a full range of health threats, including disease outbreaks such as COVID-19, natural disasters, and disasters caused by human activity. And whereas public health action, together with scientific and technological advances, has played a major role in reducing and in some cases eliminating the spread of infectious disease and in establishing today's disease surveillance and control systems. And whereas in the midst of all of the most challenging public health crises of our lifetimes, it is more important than ever to celebrate public health. Now, therefore, I, Terry Weld, President of the Eau Claire City Council, on behalf of the entire City Council and the citizens of Eau Claire, do hereby proclaim the week of April 6th through the 12th, 2020, as National Public Health Week in the City of Eau Claire, and encourage all residents to help our families, friends, neighbors, co-workers, and leaders better understand the value of public health and to celebrate the accomplishments of our public health professionals and systems. Ms. Giese, thank you for all that you do.
Thank you very much. Not kind of leaving people behind that Public Health Week nationally happens the first week of April every year, not just during COVID-19 pandemics. We have an amazing team at the Health Department, amazing Board of Health that supports us in policy making and moving forward, a strong department. City Council member sits on that Board of Health, and Emily, as well as all of the board members, make an amazing difference in the work we do. I think people have heard more about public health in the last couple of months than maybe they ever wanted or needed to. The work of public health is about prevention, and we hope that the work that's happening now with all of the partners, as Dale described, will help make the impact of this disease as minimal as possible. So thank you for the recognition to everybody, and we will continue working on other topics, hopefully soon, but right now we're full into paying attention to infectious disease. So thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate it. I also have another proclamation this afternoon in regards to Eau Claire Jazz Week, which, as we all know, has been canceled, but we want to recognize what it means and what it meant for our community. Proclamation reads as follows: whereas the Eau Claire Jazz Festival, presented by Eau Claire Jazz Inc., in partnership with the University of Wisconsin, Eau Claire, has earned its distinction as one of the oldest and largest jazz festivals in the country by providing local, national, and international artists the opportunity to share their creative work. And whereas the Eau Claire Jazz Festival typically draws thousands of jazz lovers of all ages from across the country to Eau Claire to attend clinics and concerts showcasing some of the best teachers and performers in the jazz world and highlighting the enduring elements of this distinctly American music. And whereas, although the current COVID-19 pandemic prevents us from physically gathering together this year, it cannot prevent us from furthering our appreciation of jazz music. And whereas the mission of Eau Claire Jazz Inc. is to educate, entertain, promote, and perpetuate the worldwide cultural experience of jazz by providing exciting and authentic jazz experiences and inspiring audiences to build a lifelong appreciation for jazz. Now, therefore, I, Terry Weld, President of the Eau Claire City Council, on behalf of the entire City Council and citizens of Eau Claire, do hereby proclaim April 20th to the 26th, 2020, as Eau Claire Jazz Week in the City of Eau Claire, and urge the citizens of Eau Claire to cultivate an appreciation of jazz music while remaining safer at home this year, and look forward to the time when we can all gather again. President John Jensko also had asked me to share some words with him, with you, so I'm going to just read a message from him. Thank you, Council President Weld and City Council members, for recognizing the Eau Claire Jazz Festival. Our event is our largest student-run festival in the country. It is typically a multiple-day festival involving competitions, clinics, concerts in the Jazz Crawl downtown, formerly known as 52nd Street. Jazz bands come from all over the Midwest to compete in multiple classifications from middle school through college and attend clinics conducted by jazz masters from around the country in a variety of topics, from performance techniques to business aspects of the profession. This year is different due to COVID-19, requiring the cancellation of many events, including ours. Our Artistic Director, Bob Baca, Festival Director, Bree Deneur, Jazz Crawl Chair Dominic Domeyer and Executive Director Quentin Bolt have prepared an amazing festival for this year. The good news is that the jazz greats we had lined up to headline this year's festival, vocalist Diane Scher and trumpeter Sean Jones, have agreed to headline next year's festival. We're also looking into an abbreviated jazz crawl later in the year when venues open back up. While we may not be able to present the Friday Night Jazz Crawl downtown on April 24th, we will be presenting opportunities to hear and experience jazz on our website, eauclairjazz.com, and on Facebook. We are working with Blue Gold Radio and WHYS to have jazz programming that evening, and we encourage jazz fans to watch Jazz Fest in Eau Claire, filmed during the 2016 festival by Wisconsin Public Television. This can be found on the PBS website, and there will be a link on our webpage. In addition, Ken Burns' jazz miniseries documentary and a variety of jazz-themed movies can be found on various streaming platforms to fill the void. Thank you again for supporting our event, and we look forward to being back in full swing next year. Signed, John Jensko, Eau Claire Jazz Incorporated, President. Thank you, Mr. Jensko, and all of those who have been a part of this event. Okay, if everyone is ready, we will proceed to our business agenda, beginning with agenda item number 8, which is a resolution accepting a Next Gen 911 grant from the Office of Emergency Communications Department of Military Affairs. And Ms. Thompson, are you there? Ms. Thompson?
Yep, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Good afternoon.
Okay, good. Good afternoon. Okay, this resolution would accept a grant that would provide funding of up to 60% of the cost of a new next generation capable 911 phone system. The 40% match would come from Eau Claire County and City of Eau Claire funds, consistent with other communication center equipment using a 70-30 split. The phone system is included in the current capital improvement plan under the community-wide communication system project, which includes both the phone system and the radio system, and is currently projected for 2022. With the acceptance of this grant, we would need to move the project to 2021 during the 2021-2025 capital improvement process in order for the project to fall within the grant period. And then I can take any questions if there are any.
Are there any questions from council for Ms. Thompson? Again, any questions from council? I don't see any. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So on a motion by Councilmember Christopherson and seconded by Councilmember Klinkhammer, this item is moved. Is there any discussion? Is there any discussion from council? Seeing none, clerk. Please call the roll.
Councilmember Beaton?
Aye.
Berge?
Aye.
Christofferson?
Aye.
Emmanuel?
Aye.
Gregert?
Aye.
Klinkhammer?
Aye.
Lohr?
Aye.
Weld?
Aye.
Worthman?
Aye.
Anderson?
Aye.
And that item passes unanimously. Agenda under item number 9 is a resolution amending the budget within the Sewer Utility Capital Fund and awarding a contract for procurement number 2020-05 WWTP sludge storage tank number 7. Because this item amends the budget, a 2/3 vote or 8 affirmative votes is needed for passage. Good afternoon. Mr. Pippinger.
Good afternoon. Before the City Council is an amendment to our sewer utility capital. And it's regarding our sludge storage tank at the, adding a new sludge storage tank down at the wastewater treatment plant. The DNR requires 180 days of storage capacity. During the winter time of the year, we can't get rid of our biosolids, so we need to have enough storage. Part of the issue has been our new upgrades. In 2015, we have increased our treatment capacity to about 98, 99%. So less contaminants are going out into the river. We're getting more solids. So subsequently, we need more storage, and this is the reason for that. The storage tank was originally budgeted in the 2019 capital improvement plan. There were 5 bids that were received. The low bid was higher than what was available in the budget by approximately $261,000, and that's what we're asking for is a budget appropriation from fund balance within the sewer utility totaling $261,000. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions from council? Again, any questions from council? I don't see any. Thank you, Mr. Pippinger. On a motion then by Councilmember Worthman and seconded by Councilmember Gregert, this item is moved. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Berge. Aye. Christopherson.
Aye.
Emmanuel. Aye. Gregert.
Aye.
Klinkhammer.
Aye.
Lorch.
Aye.
Weld.
Aye.
Worthman.
Aye.
Anderson. Aye. Beaton. Aye.
And that item passes unanimously. Agenda item number 10 is a resolution approving the renewal of the capital campaign and operating agreement between the City of Eau Claire and Outdoor More Incorporated at Pinehurst Park. Mr. Pippinger.
Good afternoon again.
Good afternoon.
Before the City Council is a renewal and amendment of the capital campaign and operating agreement between the City of Eau Claire and Outdoor More at Pinehurst Park. May we see the next slide? Outdoor More Group will be required to fundraise for the entire cost of the project and amenities before the city will commence any construction of the project. Outdoor More has previously made improvements to the park through the current agreement that included trails that facilitated sports of skiing, snowboarding, cross-country skiing, and mountain biking. New improvements shall consist of Frisbee golf course, a bike pump track, bike park, to already added amenities within the park. Next slide, please. The term of the agreement will expire on December 31st, 2014, with an extension of a 1 5-year term expiring on December 31st of 2029. We've had an agreement with the Outdoor More Group since 2012. The responsibilities of the Outdoor More Group are spelled out in the agreement. The Department of Community Service finds that this partnership will be beneficial to the parties and the community as a whole by creating new attributes and amenities within the park. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions, and I believe Mr. Christian Peterson is also listening in, and he is the president of Outdoor More, so if you have any questions for him, he is available.
Does council have any questions for Mr. Pippinger or for Mr. Peterson? Again, I'll ask if there are any questions from council. Councilmember Christopherson.
Thank you, President Weld. I'm just interested in a little bit more information for the public about Outdoor More. I know that in our neighborhoods, there's a lot of interest in adding to the amenities of our community and parks. So would you just give me a little background about who Outdoor More is and how they're organized and the relationship to the city?
Sure. And maybe I can have Christian, because he's, we work with them. We have a really great partnership with that group, and they've done some, working with us, they've created some nice amenities there. But if Christian is online.
Mr. Peterson?
Yes, I am.
Good afternoon. I don't know if,
Can you hear me?
were you able, yes, we can hear you. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Did you hear Councilmember Christopherson's questions, or would you like her to repeat it?
No, I might have to repeat it. I just heard a little bit of it.
Thank you so much for your work and your interest in Pinehurst Park. My question is, there is a lot of interest in the public and neighborhood support of their community parks. I'd like to have a little bit of information to share with the public about your organization and how you created this relationship with the city and support for Pinehurst.
Oh, no problem. So this was really started back when Bill Beaver was a part of the city there. I had originally been involved in the Dunn County Snow Park back then in Menominee, and his wife was a teacher in Menominee, and she had seen some of the impact it was having on youth to have that kind of recreational area for a lot of her students, and it created a lot of motivation. So Bill and I had got connected and developed kind of an idea for Pinehurst Park, and rallied up a group of other enthusiasts in town, and have pursued it since 2012 and increased kind of amenities over year after year. So.
May I follow up? Thank you very much. I want one, maybe two more details. How many persons are involved in Outdoor More? Is it a board of some sort? Is it a board of something?
Christian? Christian, question is regarding the board setup of the group of Outdoor More and how many people are involved in the fundraising group?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we have a pretty diverse group. I'm the president. I work for Benedict's in town here. Craig Matthews, our vice president. He's a local fitness instructor over at Momentum. Damien Hornke, he's the CFO over at McKay Construction. He's our treasurer. We have Andy Weens. He is our secretary. We have a bunch of at-large and other board members, anywhere from nurses in town to school teachers to both professional snowboarders. We have a professional snowboarder on our board as well. Some other people involved in the cross-country ski industry as well. So it's a pretty diverse group. Kind of covers all aspects of what Pinehurst is. It's meant to just be a spot where we can get outdoor more. We love that hill. We love the terrain. We love the ability to, build stuff that isn't normally in other areas because of our terrain diversity. So that has created a lot of opportunity, and it's got a long history. I shared the timeline all the way from the early 1900s to the city, which we have. And if anybody would like to see it, I can share it. But it's a pretty interesting timeline from the 1900s. That part.
I have one last question. Is that all right?
Certainly.
it would be very inspiring for people that have the same desires that you have, but don't have the wherewithal. About how many fundraising events do you hold a year for what you're doing?
I was having trouble with that one again. Somebody.
Yeah, Christian, question is, how many fundraising events do you have per year?
Yep. We used to do a few more, like open fundraising events, like we do silent auction, we do a local brewery, stuff like that. We just kind of scale those back. We focus a lot more on grants. We've noticed that if we can focus on specific projects, there's a grant for it out there, and we have a grant writer on our board. She's also a local nurse. Her name is Jen Rock. She does a great job, and we find the project, she finds the grants, and we try to match it up and make sure we have city approval accordingly, move forward.
Thank you for all you do.
Thanks, Christian.
Are there any more questions from council for Mr. Peterson or for Mr. Pippinger? I don't see any. Thank you, Mr. Peterson. We appreciate all your work on this project. Thank you, Mr. Pippinger.
No problem. Appreciate the opportunity, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So on a motion then by Council Vice President Emmanuel and Councilmember Beaton, this item is moved. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Berge.
Thank you, Council President. I just want to just highlight and thank Outdoor More and Christian Peterson and my full team for the work they've done at Pinehurst Park. It's been pretty amazing to witness over the last couple of years that I've been on council. And just, like I said, the partnership between the city and this organization, it's been really nice to see. Outdoor More has been they're a hardworking group, and they're very passionate about what they do and about year-round activity out at the park. And they've just added a lot to that park on the north side of Eau Claire. One more thing, they've been really involved with the neighborhood association that was recently started. For instance, this Frisbee golf course that they're getting up and going. They were at the neighborhood meetings. They were seeking input. They were listening to the neighborhood, and I just a lot of communication back and forth. So it's very appreciative of the group here in Eau Claire.
Thank you, Councilmember Berge. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, City Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Christofferson.
Aye.
Emmanuel.
Aye.
Gregert.
Aye.
Klinkhammer. Lohr.
Aye.
Weld.
Aye.
Worthman.
Aye.
Anderson.
Aye.
Beaton.
Aye.
Berge.
Aye.
And that item passes unanimously. Agenda item number 11 is a resolution approving a site plan in a P Public District to allow a service center and site improvements to Xcel Energy Center located at 1501 Black Avenue. Does council have any additional questions for Mr. Allen? Seeing no questions for Mr. Allen, on a motion by Councilmember Anderson and seconded by Councilmember Berge, this item is moved. Is there any discussion regarding agenda item number 11? Seeing none? Madam City Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Emmanuel.
Aye.
Gregert.
Aye.
Klinkhammer.
Aye.
Lohr.
Aye.
Weld.
Aye.
Worthman.
Aye.
Anderson.
Aye.
Beaton.
Aye.
Berge.
Aye.
Christofferson.
Aye.
And that item passes unanimously. Agenda item number 12 is a resolution approving the third addendum to the final condominium plat of 222 Water Street condominiums. Mr. Allen? Does council have any questions for Mr. Allen, or one moment? Mr. Allen?
Yes, thank you, Council President Weld and members of the council.
Good afternoon.
So you can hear me okay?
We can hear you fine. Yep, thank you.
Great, thank you. Just wanted to give a quick overview of this before moving ahead, but this is before the Plan Commission at their meeting last week. It is recommended for approval before you this afternoon. This, again, as noted, is the third addendum to the condominium plat for 222 Water Street condominiums. As you are probably aware, this is a 4-story building with basement parking. I did want to note that what has changed with this addendum, or the reason for the addendum, I should say, why it's before you here this afternoon, is that the proposed lessee for Unit 1 has been assigned responsibility by the owner for all maintenance and taxes for the adjacent east parking lot, since the lessee will have exclusive use of that. Thus, the east parking lot is included as a part of the addendum for Unit 1. So that's the primary purpose for the addendum before you this afternoon.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. Does council have any questions? Again, any questions for Mr. Allen? I'm not seeing any. Thank you very much. So on a motion by Councilmember Lohr and seconded by Councilmember Christofferson, this item is moved. Is there any discussion? Again, any discussion regarding agenda item number 12? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Gragert.
Aye.
Klinkhammer.
Aye.
Lohr.
Aye.
Weld.
Aye.
Worthman.
Aye.
Anderson.
Aye.
Beaton.
Aye.
Berge.
Aye.
Christofferson.
Aye.
Emmanuel.
Aye.
And that item passes unanimously. Agenda item number 13 is a resolution approving a certified survey map with right-of-way dedication for properties at the western terminus of Lorch Avenue. Are there any questions for Mr. Allen in regards to this agenda item?
Council President Weld, this is Scott again.
Hi.
Hi. I may defer to Mr. Nick if he's available to chime in, but it may be appropriate to suspend the rules for this item and move it to after item number 17. It is related to that zoning. However, it is not an ordinance for action. It is simply a resolution. Hence, it's on your agenda before the rezoning. So it'd be more appropriate to have the discussion on the ordinance for the rezoning, item number 17, before hearing this item.
Do I need to move that? All right, so on a motion then by Councilmember Klinkhammer and seconded by Councilmember Worthman, we will move this item to follow agenda item number 17. Is there any discussion regarding this motion? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Klinkhammer.
Aye.
Lohr.
Aye.
Weld.
Aye.
Worthman.
Aye.
Anderson,
Aye.
Beaton,
Aye.
Berge,
Aye.
Christofferson,
Aye.
Emmanuel,
Aye.
Greigert.
Aye. So that item is moved to follow agenda item number 17. Moving on to agenda item number 13, I'm sorry. Moving on to agenda item number 14, a resolution creating a new voting ward within the city of Eau Claire. Ms. Repo, anything else you wish to share? Does council have any questions for Ms. Repo in regards to this agenda item? I'm not seeing any. Then on a motion by Councilmember Greigert and seconded by Council Vice President Emmanuel, this item is moved. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Lohr,
Aye.
Weld,
Aye.
Worthman,
Aye.
Anderson,
Aye.
Beaton,
Aye.
Berge,
Aye.
Christofferson,
Aye.
Emmanuel,
Aye.
Greigert,
Aye.
Klinkhammer.
Aye.
And that item passes unanimously. Under ordinances for action, agenda item number 15, we have an ordinance rezoning a property located at 3801 Gateway Drive from TC3 to C3P and to adopt a general development plan with site plan for a commercial building. This item was postponed from our March 23rd and 24th, 2020 council meetings. Does council have any additional questions for Mr. Allen? Seeing no additional questions, on a motion then by Councilmember Beaton and seconded by Councilmember Anderson, this item is moved. Is there any discussion? Seeing no discussion, Madam City Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Weld,
Aye.
Worthman,
Aye.
Anderson,
Aye.
Beaton,
Aye.
Berge,
Aye.
Christofferson,
Aye.
Emmanuel,
Aye.
Greigert,
Aye.
Klinkhammer,
Aye.
Lohr.
And that item passes unanimously. Agenda item number 16 is an ordinance rezoning a property located at the northeast of Kaden Court and Aspen Ridge Drive from TR1A and R1 to R1 and R2P, and to adopt the general development plan with site plan for twin homes. Again, this item was postponed from our March 23rd and 24th, 2020 council meeting. Does council have any questions for Mr. Allen from last night's presentation? Any questions from council? Seeing none, motion by Councilmember Berge and seconded by Councilmember Lohr, this item is moved. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Christofferson.
Thank you, President Weld. I am supportive of this rezoning, but in the conversation last night at the public hearing, I simply want to lift up the conversation that one of the residents talked about changing the covenants of their neighborhood. And I want to encourage a really vigorous conversation between that development and the new developer. I found him easy and responsive to the needs of the community and really wants to have the developments that he is building to be vigorous and places that support family. So I hope that as the community goes through this this building process, that their communication would be open and that they would easily address their concerns and develop that relationship. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Christopherson. Is there any other discussion from council? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Worthman,
Aye.
Anderson,
Aye.
Beaton,
Aye.
Berge,
Aye.
Christopherson,
Aye.
Emmanuel,
Aye.
Gregert,
Aye.
Klinkhammer,
Aye.
Lor,
Aye.
Weld.
Aye. And that item passes unanimously. Agenda item number 17 is an ordinance rezoning property located at the west terminus of Lorch Avenue from TR1A to C3P and R3P, and to adopt the general development plan with site plan for multifamily apartment buildings and commercial development. Does council have any additional questions for Mr. Allen from last night's presentation? I'm not seeing any questions. On a motion then by Councilmember Christopherson and seconded by Councilmember Klinkhammer, this item is moved. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Emmanuel.
Thank you, Council President Weld. I want to just speak tonight in appreciation and acknowledge the hard work that the applicant has done, and city staff has been very diligent in looking at this revised proposal and bringing it before council. I will be supporting this evening. I did have, I'm persuaded because the information is different from last time, and I'm also persuaded that we are entering into a brand new economic landscape, and our community has been very supportive of development, and I think it's all the more important that we figure out ways and be open to ways of how we're going to be growing our tax base and how we're going to be providing and supporting stability for our community, which includes safe housing and growing the tax base so that we can best take care of all of our citizens in our community.
Thank you, Council Vice President. Is there any discussion from council? Councilmember Gregert.
Thank you, President Weld. I just appreciated this process. As a plan commissioner, we saw this in October, and it was postponed within the plan commission for more detail, and it's been great working with developers and staff on continuing to improve this project and learn more about the impact of it. I appreciate the patience of the Plan Commission and City Council moving forward, and the Jonah Affordable Housing Task Force for the work to make sure that that was part of the discussion as well. The piece about increased traffic, I think, is something where I believe that, when you have these places on the edge of the city that we're building to a relatively high density, we're preventing the need to build further out from the city and increase commuting and increase traffic even further. So I think this is an appropriate use of the space and obviously matches the comprehensive plan. So I'll be able to support this project as I did last time.
Thank you, Councilmember Gregert. Councilmember Beaton. Councilmember Beaton.
Yes, thank you. I was just working on unmuting. I also wanted to say thanks and express my support for this project. I remember the first time it came before council, I was not supportive for concerns over the affordability of the residential units and also increased traffic, both car traffic and pedestrian traffic. And I just really appreciate that both the developers and also city staff seem to have been really responsive to the interests of the council and our constituents and our community, as well as answering some of those concerns that we had. So really, really nice job to both city staff and the developers, and I'm happy to support.
Thank you, Councilmember Beaton. Councilmember Worthman.
Thank you, Council President Weld. Yeah, I think, there's clearly been some changes, positive changes made to this project. I am going to support it this time. I do think that as this continues to build out and there are additional phases, I feel confident that we're going to be able to make sure that the additional concerns put on infrastructure for our city, are actually taken into account. And that was one of the things that, has been expressed by neighbors and by some of the folks who have expressed skepticism about this project, is just what the overall impact is going to be. And I do have confidence now going forward that we have an awareness for future year build outs and what that will mean for infrastructure. How do we actually make sure to handle that in a way that's sustainable? So I will be supporting it today, and I hope that folks who have written to us and shared their concerns know that their voices were heard in this process and will continue to be heard moving forward.
Thank you, Councilmember Worthman. Is there any other discussion regarding this agenda item? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Anderson.
Aye.
Beaton.
Aye.
Berge.
Aye.
Christofferson.
Aye.
Emmanuel.
Aye.
Gregert.
Aye.
Klinkhammer. Lorch.
Aye.
Weld.
Aye.
Worthman.
Aye.
And that item passes unanimously. Back to agenda item number 12, which was a resolution approving the third addendum to the final condominium. I'm sorry. Agenda item number 13, a resolution approving a certified survey map with a right-of-way dedication for properties at the western terminus of Lorch Avenue. Does council have any questions? Well, actually, Mr. Allen, are you there? Mr. Allen?
Yes. Do you hear me?
We can, yep.
Okay. I didn't have anything to add. This was shared as one of the slides last night. This is a 4-lot CSM. Again, lot 1 would be, would be the commercially zoned lot, 4.63 acres. Lots 2 and 3 are intended, or expected to be, or presented as senior living or memory care. 2.0 acres for lot 2, 3.35 for lot 3. Those are, again, rezoning as a 3P. The same with lot 4, which is the bulk of the proposed development that was just before you. So again, it's a 4-lot CSM. And then the dedication of right-of-way, as you see here, for Lorch Avenue. What's not shown here is a temporary cul-de-sac at the furthest terminus on the west end of that extension here of Lorch Avenue. So essentially what you see is what's being proposed for the right-of-way in a more permanent nature.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. Any questions from council in regards to agenda item number 13? I don't see any questions. Thank you very much. On a motion then by Council Vice President Emmanuel and seconded by Council Member Beaton, this item is moved. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Beaton.
Aye.
Berge.
Aye.
Christofferson.
Aye.
Emmanuel.
Aye.
Gregert.
Aye.
Klinkhammer.
Aye.
Lore,
Aye.
Weld,
Aye.
Worthman,
Aye.
Anderson.
Aye.
And agenda item 13 passes unanimously. Moving ahead to agenda item number 18, which is an ordinance in accordance with section 66.0217 Wisconsin statutes annexing to the city of Eau Claire and particularly to the 9th Assessment Ward, 4th Aldermanic District, being part of a parcel of land located at the southwest quarter of the southeast quarter and in the southeast quarter of the southeast quarter of section 14, township 27 north, range 10 west, town of Union, Eau Claire County, as shown on planning drawing number 20-2A. This ordinance requires a 2/3 vote of the elected members of the governing body. Therefore, 8 affirmative votes of the elected council members are required for adoption. Mr. Allen.
Thank you, President Weld and members of council. Again, this afternoon here is about 3.9 acres of vacant land in the town of Union, owned by Travis and Amy Weiss. Again, they submitted the petition going through the process to bring this into the city limits of the city of Eau Claire. Apologies for the kind of lack of clarity on this map in terms of street names, but we're looking at West Vine Street and Rosewood Lane in this area. Thank you. Property is located within the sewer service area. Water and sanitary sewer are available along both streets adjacent to the property. And the request is consistent with the comprehensive plan. Plan Commission has recommended approval for you this afternoon. Have heard from the applicant and the proposed surveyor engineer is that they are looking at some single-family housing to continue some of the similar development in the area. And I'll stand for any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Allen in regards to agenda item number 18? I don't see any. Mr. Allen, thank you.
Thank you.
On a motion then by Councilmember Anderson and seconded by Councilmember Berge, this item is moved. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Berge,
Aye.
Christofferson,
Aye.
Emmanuel,
Aye.
Gregert,
Aye.
Klinkhammer,
Aye.
Lore,
Aye.
Weld,
Aye.
Worthman,
Aye.
Anderson,
Aye.
Beaton.
Aye.
And that item passes unanimously. Agenda item number 19 is a charter ordinance relating to the City Council and the reapportionment of aldermanic districts of the City of Eau Claire. Adoption of charter ordinance requires a 2/3 vote of the elected members of the governing body. Therefore, 8 affirmative votes are required of the 11 elected council members for adoption. Ms. Reapel, do you have anything else to add? No? Does council have any questions for Ms. Reapel? Seeing none, then on a motion by Councilmember Lore and seconded by Councilmember Christofferson, this item is moved. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Christofferson,
Aye.
Emmanuel,
Aye.
Gregert,
Aye.
Klinkhammer,
Aye.
Lore,
Aye.
Weld,
Aye.
Worthman,
Aye.
Anderson,
Aye.
Beaton,
Aye.
Berge.
Aye.
And that item passes unanimously, which brings a close to our business agenda and ordinances for action and moves us to announcements from City Manager Peters. Again, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Council President Weld and the rest of the council. The only announcement I would have tonight is that a week from tonight is your organizational meeting. So at 4 o'clock, a week from today, on Tuesday, the 21st, will be your organizational meeting. Because of the situation we find ourselves in, we're going to have to do that a little bit differently than we have in the past. Council President Weld and myself and the city attorney are working through exactly how that's going to look and how we're going to do it. Obviously, we won't be doing the group picture right away and some of those other nuances. But we will stay tuned, and we'll have more updates to you as the week goes on. But please hold next week, Tuesday, 21st at 4 o'clock for your organizational meeting.
Councilmember Worthman.
Thank you, Council President Weld. I just wanted to, coming out of yesterday's election results, just recognize the incredible work of Clerk Reapel and the entire city staff that assisted with election day last week. And given all of the difficulties and circumstances, working to make it as safe as possible and accessible as possible, I just think deserves a huge commendation, and certainly just, I think, our support goes a long way in that as well. I also wanted to give a congratulatory note to yourself, Council President, on the win last night, and as well to congratulate our newest incoming City Council member, Mai Zhang, who I think will add an excellent strength to our council as well moving into the future. So congratulations, and just wanted to add that note and recognition as well.
Thank you, Councilmember Worthman. Greatly appreciated. Are there any other announcements from council members? Councilmember Christopherson.
So there will be a packet for the committee commission assignments coming for us to study. Thank you.
Are there any other questions or announcements from council? One moment, Mr. Lorch, if you want to turn your microphone on. Councilmember Lorch.
I just say that the 21st at 4 o'clock, is that back here or the section is meeting?
So.
Certainly, City Manager Peters.
Thank you. So it will certainly be an electronic format, and the exact details of how we're going to work that out, we will be communicating with you later this week.
Council Vice President Emmanuel.
Thank you, Council President. I just wanted to put a plug in that I know that and totally understand the reason why it needs to look different next week. And if there's any way we can have a few minutes of celebration, a little bit like we did last year, but whether it's we're raising a virtual piece of cake to one another or something very brief as a placeholder for the celebration that we'll get to have to recognize our council president and our incoming member for their victories, and just to kind of have a nice start to their leg of service as we start a new culture of recognizing and celebrating this important day.
Thank you, Council Vice President.
That certainly noted, and as part of the planning process, it's good when we can work a little bit of fun and a little bit of recognition and celebration even in these challenging times. So good point, and I appreciate the reinforcement of that. Thank you.
Council Member Worthman, did you have another announcement? Oh, all right. Any other announcements from council? I don't see any. Again, I would just like to express my sincere thanks for the ongoing continual work of our staff and our council and our community to continue to move forward and to continue to work diligently on stopping the spread and staying positive and really making it a priority to see us through this. And so I would just like to express to all of you, to Eau Claire and to my fellow council members to take care and be well. And we will be in touch soon, and appreciate all your work. If there is no objection from council, and I'll give you 5 seconds. Seeing none, we are adjourned. Have a great night.
This program was brought to you by a cooperation between Newsworks and the City of Eau Claire. A transcript of this meeting is available for the hearing impaired. It will be available within 7 days of this telecast. Call 715-839-4912 or TDD 715-839-1689 or write Eau Claire City Clerk, P.O. Box 5148, Eau Claire, Wisconsin 54702-5148.